Righty, kia ora tātou, nā mai haramai, welcome everyone. I'll just start us with a karakia. E rā i tamanui te rā, whiti mai raka, whiti mai raro, kia pia te ti, kia wana te ti, kia rito te ti, kia tau mai, te Māori, homi e, hui e, tai ki e. Brilliant, thank you. Welcome everyone. Just go back into the agenda. Welcome, we've got Ellie, great to have you with us, from Geraldine. What I'm going to do, team, is... Sorry? Rosie. Oh, did I? Sorry, that's Rosie. Apologies, I was away with the fairies. That's right, good start. We'll reverse that back up. We'll start with the karakia. No. Apologies, Rosie. Now, we will, on that note, we'll move to apologies. Any apologies? I'll just note Ross from Point and Ellie from Pleasant Point. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Scott, Councillor Burt. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Alrighty, so team, I'm just going to move a couple of things around. We've got the Kaya, Ella and Hayden from Exchange, so welcome team, appreciate you being here, and they're going to come and tell us about Sister Cities Exchange. So we're going to move that to the front and then we'll address public forum where we've got Dr Phil Driver and we've got Russell Lund as well, and then we'll move into the agenda proper. So on that note, welcome team, and come up the front here to grab a seat and just push the button when you're ready to go. It feels formal, but we're all friends, so we can. So it's pretty informal, but we're really just interested to hear about the exchange. You don't have to give us 30 minutes worth. It's we're just really keen to hear from you and the benefits that you got from the exchange, and any nice tidbits you want to pass on. But floor's yours, team, and then we might have some questions for you as well. Yeah, push that and just bring it down. And yeah, perfect. Thanks, Ella.
Is that on? Oh, yeah. Well, I've just got some bullet points of stuff to share, I guess. So, highlights, challenges, and all that kind of stuff. So, I could just go through and say them, and then questions, and Hayden and Kaya can add what they want. So, okay, highlights. Definitely for me was the family taking me to see the beautiful sights around Japan. So they took me to Sapporo and we went shopping. Very exciting stuff. It was a huge city. It just went on for miles and miles, and big skyscrapers, very different from what we see here in New Zealand, so that was pretty exciting. And we also went to an arcade. It was like a game centre where they had lots of little arcade games, sporting stuff. It has so many floors. It's just floors and floors of different games, etc. And I also went to the Otaru Aquarium. So Otaru is like a smaller town, about an hour away from Inouye. And it's by the sea, so it's very, very beautiful. And there was an aquarium there which had lots of cool fish. And yeah, that was also amazing. And then they also took me to the second biggest shopping mall in Hokkaido, which was very, very big. So yeah, do you guys have any highlights you want to share?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I think one thing was how kind the families were. You hear or I thought at least going into it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so strict. Japanese family, strict, respect, oh my gosh. I walk in, and this was after the wee dinner thing we had, and this was my first time meeting the dad. I walk in, take off my shoes, go inside. He looks at me, he's like, what? And he just looks up. I'm like, yep. And then he looks down, looks at my feet, because I got size 15 feet. He's like, oh my gosh. He pretty much grabs me, puts me up against a wall, grabs a wee ruler, measures my height, and then he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And the mum's off to the side, taking photos, smile, come on. And I'm like, oh. But yeah, it was awesome. It's one of my highlights. Do you have anything?
One of my highlights is just meeting new people. I enjoyed going to school and Also meeting Hayden's host family, since we lived just around the corner from each other. And yeah, I just loved school because everyone was so different and welcoming, and especially with my hair. They offered to brush it, and once they did, they didn't know how to control it because it was just everywhere. And then, yeah, they just loved talking to me, getting to know me, and I also loved getting to know them. Yeah.
Also, another highlight for me was definitely the food. I tried so much food while I was over there. It was crazy. But it's pretty different stuff, I'm not going to lie. It's very delicious, but sometimes you sort of looked at it and you're like, what is that? Am I allowed to be like eating this? But no, it was very good. And like I ate lots of raw fish. Like, don't know if that's appealing or not, but it was very good. And also just like getting to know so many special people through the experience as well. Like my family, my host family who I stayed with, they let me meet their extended family. They came around for dinner multiple times, and they were just so welcoming and accommodating, and so were my school friends. They all, made the effort to speak to me in English, even though I knew that was going to be hard. And yeah, teachers, they always tried to include me in classes, even though I couldn't speak Japanese that well. And yeah, just they were also welcoming and just amazing people. So yeah. We also did a radio station. We got to speak on the Inua radio, which was very, very cool. And they just asked us questions, and we just simply answered them, and they translated them into Japanese. So that was pretty cool, and it felt pretty professional. But yeah, that's another one of my highlights. So should we move on to maybe some challenges that we faced? So for me, a challenge was definitely the language barrier. It meant that it was very hard to communicate with people, obviously not knowing much Japanese, and it was difficult to have conversations. But we got through it by using Google Translate. We'd just speak into it, and then they'd listen to whatever the translator had to say. So we did overcome that challenge. But it would have been nice to, have a real conversation in English or Japanese, whatever it would have been. That would have been nice. But anything you guys have?
I think for me, like a big, change of routine as well, because I'm generally quite a structured person where I get up at a certain time, do certain things, where in Japan they had a completely different, way of living in our family, and it wasn't bad, but I think, especially because I'd get up and then they'd be like, oh yeah, we're going to this place in an hour. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I didn't know where it was, what it was. But yeah, I think our routine changed, and obviously they live a bit different. Like they have dinner at 8 p.m. there, around about that's the time we were eating. So I would get to 6 and I'd be like, man, I'm hungry. But it was good though, yeah.
Probably on the same boat as Hayden, just having my routine changed, especially with the time difference, since the sun would rise at around 5 and I would also wake up at that time. And yeah, that's just about it, time difference.
So we could speak about school now. So it's pretty similar kind of structure to what we have in New Zealand. Starts and finishes around the similar time, but the students, they stay in their same classroom for the whole day, which is very different to what we have in New Zealand. For each class, they stay in, and even for lunchtime they stay in the classroom, and the teachers are the ones who move around. So they'll come in with their books and their chalk, and we'll all be sitting on separate desks facing a chalkboard, and you'll just hear the pretty gruesome sound of the chalk against the chalkboard. But yeah, so it was 6 50-minute classes with 10 minutes in between, and then a very short break for lunch, which was different because I value my lunchtime. But during the classes, I mainly just did my own work. I had a couple of internals to do over the holidays, so I just did those, as I couldn't understand again what they were saying, but they did get me to contribute and participate in some English classes by reading out some texts or phrases, whatever they were, just for the class so they could understand them fully. So, yeah.
I found that, I guess, a lot of the students there kind of, it almost felt like they based a lot of their self-worth on, I guess, the grades they were getting, which, like, they were all very academically focused and they were all trying so hard to get a perfect mark. And, like, you'd even have some of them be like even my one, like the guy I was staying with, I was like, oh, you do like school? And he was like, yes, I'm good. I get good grade. I was like, oh, okay. And then if someone wasn't very smart, like the guy would say to me, he's not good, he gets a bad grade. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, it's completely different in New Zealand. And yeah, it was something interesting I just picked up on. Yeah.
The school I attended was very different from theirs. It was separated into different classes where all the students had similar interests. So one class would focus on cooking while the other class would be focused on English. And luckily I was in that English class. And so they were all very academically focused and yet dedicated to the extracurricular things they participated in. They were very devoted to setting up summer festivals and all that things. And yeah, I just really love their dedication towards what they love and what they do.
So some cultural differences that I noticed were that they are so much more polite than us. Yeah, no digs whatsoever, but so they like take their shoes off and change them for designated like inside and outside areas. So every time we went outside, you put on your outside shoes, and same for your inside shoes. So that's just something that's like not getting the dirt like from outside coming in. It's also, I think, a cultural, religious thing as well. And then like we would say blessings and thank you before and after eating every time we would eat, even at school, even if it was just a snack, you'd say your blessing and then you'd be able to eat. So it's just, you know, being very polite and thankful for what you have was definitely like the main cultural difference that I noticed. So, yeah. You guys have anything to add?
I thought that, like, just in general, they were a lot more welcoming than we are, especially at school, than we are in New Zealand. Like, I find in New Zealand, we are quite stuck, like, we're always with one another, I guess, like other New Zealanders. And if someone from Japan comes to our school or something like that, people are kind of, you know, a bit reserved and step back. But I found in Japan they were quite open to me at school, and they were, even though it was pretty hard to have a normal conversation, they were quite open, they were quite wanting to get to know me and talking to me and trying to start conversations. Just, yeah, a lot more, I guess, welcoming to foreigners. Yeah.
Just adding on to Hayden's, yes, they were very welcoming, and especially since I was one of their first foreign exchange students. And yeah, very sociable, unlike New Zealand people sometimes. And I think that's just because we're so used to having people from different backgrounds and ethnicities that we don't really take it into account what's actually happening or where they're from. But yeah, that's all.
Is there any questions or anything? That's all I've got written down.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be. That's great. We really appreciate that. Questions, Councillor Scott.
Got one question for you each. I know you, Hayden, love your music and you girls are very good at your sport. So did you try some extracurricular activities, or was it just very school focused, or did you get some opportunities to play in a band or do anything like that?
At, I guess, my school, there wasn't necessarily that sort of opportunity for me, but I did, because my host, the guy that came to my house, my host brother, he started picking up drums when he left me, and then he started a band, so I got to watch his band rehearse, and I got to play with them sometimes. So yeah, they did have like a music class, but he didn't take that. I'm not sure how it worked at the high school that I went to, but yeah.
Yeah, again, there wasn't a lot of opportunities to participate in the extracurricular stuff, but I did get the chance to play in a volleyball practice one time, which was pretty cool. So yeah, quite into volleyball, so that was pretty cool just to have a hit around with some girls who also were pretty good. So yeah.
My host sister was part of the dance club, and so she kind of forced me to try it out. But in return, I taught them some kapaka or just basic Tongan dancing.
Councillor Oliver.
I've just got a quick question, it's a bit of a curly one. Just really interested in different cultures, how they treat guys your age with telephones. Are they stricter on them? Are they allowed to have them all the time? How does that work? Because I'm always interested on what different cultures treat phones and stuff.
So at school, during class, you're not allowed them, like, at all. Well, that was the case for me anyway, but they were pretty lenient on me, obviously, because I need it for my translation and all of that. But during your breaks, you're allowed to use them. Lunchtime, you're allowed to use them. And then at home, my family had no issue with me being on it at all. So, yeah, they weren't too strict as I thought they would be. Yeah, they were just normal, yeah.
I think a lot of it was also just kind of knowing when to use and not to use your phone, just kind of using common sense. I guess, like, if you're at the dinner table eating, obviously you're not going to pull out your phone, just like you would in New Zealand. Sorry? Yeah. And, like, I mean, in Japan, you would see kids, especially at the end of the day when, like, the homeroom teacher was talking with their phone, like, just on Instagram, bored out of their mind. But, like, yeah, I think it's probably the same, maybe a little bit stricter, but phones aren't banned from school there.
Yeah, the phones aren't banned at school, but it's quite funny to see when a teacher walks in, because they all have a plan on where to hide it and how to hide it. But yeah, apart from that, they're a very good self-control, and when I'm alone, I didn't really have time to go on my phone since I was focused on work and just getting to know everyone. Yeah.
Loved hearing these stories. It must have been quite daunting going to a foreign country where you don't speak the language. So what advice have you got to other young people that might apply next time on this, but a bit hesitant or nervous about going to a foreign country where you don't speak the language?
My advice would be just to sign up and just do it, because it's such a once in a lifetime opportunity. Even if you do end up travelling to Japan, you're never ever going to be seeing what we have seen on this trip. You're never going to be going to stay with a host family, to stay in a small town, to get to know people at school or anything. So just such an incredible opportunity to see something that is so rare. And and also I'd also say to definitely learn some Japanese. So yeah, just some basic stuff, just so you can just say, hi, thanks, please, just the basic stuff, so you know a little bit. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Just do it. Just I think go in with an open mind, because obviously if you go into somewhere with an open mind and a positive attitude, you're going to get a lot more out of it than if you go in thinking, oh, this is going to be awful, the parents aren't going to like me, this, that. Just go in positive. And if anything happens, just, I guess, brush it off. It's only 3 weeks. And yeah.
Yeah, just learn the basics or simple mannerism. But luckily for me, I learnt some in year 9 and 10, so that was a big advantage. But either way, there's the internet now and many ways to solve your translation problems and get through life while you're there. Yeah.
Awesome. Any further questions, team? It might be an idea for future local radio hosts, maybe Q&A with the Inua students moving forward. Thank you. We really appreciate that. Thanks for coming and presenting. Appreciate you representing your schools, council and the district and being great ambassadors. Thank you, and thanks so much for being involved in the exchange.
We'd also like to say thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do and take part in this amazing experience. We've learned so much and we're so grateful, and we would definitely recommend it to anyone who is thinking about applying for next year or further years. So thank you all so much for listening as well. So thank you.
Yes, sweet. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah.
No, our pleasure. Thanks for being involved, and thanks for being great ambassadors. Next team, well done. Thanks. See you later. So we're just going to Sister Cities. We're just going to receive a note. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Oliver, Councillor Shannon, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Cool. So we'll go back now to item 3, which is public forum, and we've got Dr. Phil Driver first. So welcome, Dr. Phil. And we've got a presentation. Is that going up? I know we've all received the presentation, but I think that's some slides are going up as well. That's all right. No worries. Perfect. The floor's yours.
Thank you. I've been to a number of council meetings where some councillors have said they want more information and other councillors have said we've got too much information. And it came across to me that you perhaps have been receiving the wrong mix of information. In fact, to make good decisions, you need information that's necessary, you need it to be sufficient and not too much, and most of all, it's got to be credible. So people can make all sorts of presentations to you. If you don't trust it, it's a waste of time. So I'm going to touch on that as it relates to climate change. I'm presenting here as a granddad fighting for my grandkids' future and for your grandkids' futures. They'll experience 24 times the number of extreme weather events that I have. And every statement I'll be making today, I've got hard evidence to back it up. I'm an experienced consultant. I'm not looking for work, but I'll help if you want me to. And for those of you who aren't keen on consultants, I'm cheaper than many of your staff. So I'm all in favour of council wanting good value for money, but that should apply to both consultants and staff. That's hopefully the last assertive statement I make today. Is anybody anywhere competently collecting, synthesising and making credible economic, environmental, social and cultural recommendations specific to South Canterbury? So about 3 days ago, this report just came out from a bunch of universities around the world, leading scientists, the 2024 State of the Climate Report. I printed out a copy for each of you, and I encourage you to have a look at that because there's a whole lot of graphs in there showing what is already happening on climate change. These aren't some fanciful models. This is what's already happening. This morning I received this report, Ernst & Young, 98 pages, a nature-positive Aotearoa economic analysis of Aotearoa New Zealand nature opportunity. A lot of detail in here on our agricultural sector and its future risks and opportunities. 98 pages. I don't know if you're going to read that one. And Reese this morning sent me through details about a seminar on the rise of bioengineering. The messages in all of these reports are not particularly encouraging for South Canterbury, and I'll explain why. So I'm going to give you 4 examples of climate change complexity that impact on us. And it's unreasonable to expect any of you to know about these in detail or to know what to do with them. We need help. So the first one is drought in Central America. Second one is destabilisation of the Antarctic circumpolar vortex. Lovely big words in there. Third one is globally evolving Scope 3 emission standards, and the fourth one is global vegetarian trends. What have they got to do with South Canterbury? Well, let's go to the first one, drought in Central America. Anybody know why that's significant? What's happening in Central America? The large lake that feeds the locks for the Panama Canal is running out of water. The locks can't operate the way they were, so shipping has been cut by 1/3. So ships now have to go around Cape Horn. So ships from New Zealand with our produce going to the eastern seaboard of America or go to Europe have to go around Cape Horn. It costs more, it adds to the carbon footprint, and takes longer. How significant is it to us? Well, shipping costs were quoted in the closure of Smithfield. So shipping does matter to us. So I say decreasing demand for sheep products and shipping partly to blame for the closure of Smithfield. So increased shipping costs and Scope 3 emissions as a result of drought in Central America. What about this one? Destabilisation of the Antarctic circumpolar vortex. Anybody knows what that means for us? Probably not. Okay, I don't expect you to. Early September, we had 5 days of nor'west, followed by 5 days of southerly, 174 km/h gust at Lake Ohau. What caused that, you know? This is not business as usual. This was not our normal anticyclone, cyclone or anticyclone depression sequence. It was due to this, the destabilisation of the vortex. If we could just play that video now. So this is the high altitude vortex of air rushing around Antarctica. Look at New Zealand now, and now, and now, and now, and now. Thank you. That didn't used to happen. The vortex did not come up over New Zealand. That vortex caused that 5 days of nor'westers at the beginning of September. In Europe, the same thing's happening with the polar vortex up there. They're having 10-day heat waves, 10-day heat domes, as they're called, temperatures of over 50 degrees. Is that what's coming our way? Well, we've already gone from 2 to 3 days of nor'westers to 5 days of nor'westers. It's already happening. Does anybody know the implications for our food production due to that destabilisation of the vortex? Is anybody even asking that question? Because I imagine if you're a dairy farmer and we had 10 days of howling nor'westers, your animals are not going to be particularly happy about that. So we've got some multi-million-dollar threats and opportunities just due to that, and this is very, very new, just in the last few months that this started happening. Globally evolving Scope 3 emission standards is another crucial one. So 63 countries already have them, and this is a warning from farmers to a farmers' conference from the CEO of Rabobank, who's one of the biggest lenders into the agricultural sector. Scope 3 emissions are the standards that countries set for their imported goods. And those countries are saying, we want clean products, we don't want high emission products. They represent 80% of our exports, according to KPMG. Major companies, Tesco, Dow and others are doing the same thing, introducing these Scope 3 emission standards. Has anybody read any of them? Do we know what the implications of these standards are? They're damn serious. And they won't accept offsetting. So despite what Beef and Lamb and Fonterra and others will say, they're saying we've got all these trees on our land, that offsets our emissions. That is not acceptable internationally. Offsetting has lost global credibility, and yet we're relying on it. South Canterbury's beef, lamb and dairy exports are the highest emitting globally traded food commodities in the world, apart from farmed prawns and dark chocolate. Emissions creating beef protein 100 times the emissions from pea protein. We can grow peas here. Emissions creating dairy milk proteins are 20 times the emissions from pea milk proteins. Canada's gone on to that. They're building a 500,000 tonne a year pea protein plant at the moment. Water used to create dairy milk is 5 times the water used to create pea milk. I'm not having a go at the dairy industry. These are facts coming through from the international world that we need to address. Here's a graph of the greenhouse gas emissions per 100 grams of protein. The top row is beef, the second one lamb and mutton, then prawns, beef, cheese, milk. Our major South Canterbury exports are the highest emitting food products traded globally. And our customers are saying we want low emission products. The best case scenario for reducing emissions from beef is we might get it down by 30%. That's using a toxic chemical. That's still 66 times worse than pea protein. Pea and nut proteins do not need to replicate meat. As long as they taste good, people will buy them. We can grow the food here, but if we're going to develop an industry around peas or oats or almonds or olives, it takes time to get that up and running. So there's big threats and opportunities for South Canterbury. The last one got global vegetarian trends. Globally, 22% of the world are vegetarian. That number hides some more detail. Only 16% of baby boomers are vegetarian. 27% of Gen Z are vegetarian. They are our future customers, not us old baby boomers. Gen Z, 79% eat meatless more than once a week. 65% want more plant-based proteins, and they purchase their food based on taste, price and availability, not whether it's meat or not. This is our future market. Forecast 40% of the planet will be vegetarian by 2040. That's about double what it is now. So as far as South Canterbury is concerned, I've just given an example of some of the issues, economic, social, environmental, that are absolutely going to impact our major exports. And farmers are going to be worst affected. We have to support them. So the global issues, Central American drought, polar vortices, Scope 3 emissions, vegetarian trends will impact us. Who previously has ever sat down and put those together and scoped their impact? I've done it, but am I credible? Are you going to listen to me? I would argue this is where we need a climate leaders group to pull that information together, to understand it, to distill it in a form that you can use to make decision making, and for it to be credible when you receive it. So to make informed decisions, we need to know quickly how and when these things will kick in. And we're talking hundreds of millions. So are we just going to sit back and just hope that it all goes away? I don't think so. Are we going to hope that somebody somewhere is looking at this stuff and is going to come and bring us the answers? Well, good luck on that one. I haven't seen anybody doing that for South Canterbury. So I'm recommending, as I've recommended previously, we need to set up a climate leaders group or trust, whatever you call it, to understand this stuff and give us credible advice. And who's going to lead this? Well, you're the elected members for this area. If you don't lead it, no one else will, because nobody else is picking up this need for us to look at the threats to our entire South Canterbury economy. So the leaders group I'm referring to, we need a legal entity so it can apply for additional funding. So the Community Trusts of New Zealand, their number one priority for funding is climate change. So there is further funding available. I think we need 4 to 6 local leaders with skin in the game. So these aren't staff, these are people like Michelle, whose business is, involved in major export. We need people who are looking at the new alternatives to the future. Meetly Monthly to synthesise the relevant information. Reece is good at pulling all sorts of information out of the world of knowledge, but that needs to be pulled together, not just dumped on this committee. Someone's got to synthesise it and say, I think this is going to impact that, and it looks as if this is going to impact that. What do you think? And these leaders need to come back and say, this, yes, we agree, this is how it's going to impact us. So they've got to triage stuff quickly, not spend hours and days and months writing lengthy reports. They've got to quickly say, hey, this is, I think, somewhere between 50 and 100 million. We've got to get a gut feel for this stuff really fast. And this group has got to be trusted by you. It's got to be trusted by people throughout Canterbury to come back with recommendations. And so, as I've said before, I would request that the council chip in 100,000 a year support from the council to get this off the ground and to provide leadership for this group. So that's my presentation. I'll hand around copies of this report. Can I encourage you to read this? And at the end of reading this, can I encourage you to ask yourself, what does this mean for Canterbury or South Canterbury? Because the answers aren't in here. The questions are in here. The global data is in here. How are we going to translate from that and these other reports that are coming in every day and to determine what's the right thing to do for South Canterbury on climate change? Any questions?
Thanks, Dr. Phil. Questions, Councillor Scott?
Thank you, Dr. Phil. Interesting, I looked at your presentation last night and happened to be in the Farmers Weekly as I casually read through that. It talks about regional economic development agencies are collaborating to drive optimal land uses, economic growth and resilience.
Yep.
And you'll know that Venture Timaru is part of this collaboration.
Sure.
So I encourage you to read this if you don't get the Farmers
I
Weekly.
get it, I read it, yeah.
Well, so I sort of challenge you on that no one in our district is doing anything. I'd say Venture Timaru is very much in the game and working collaboratively across the country when it comes to diversification and looking at different land uses. I'm part of working with Nigel and Tony Howie on stakeholder engagement in that space, and so I've encouraged you several times to to meet with Nigel and talk about that, because there's some good work going on that space. Just going back to your peas. Now, being a crop farmer with my husband Dave, I sat down with him last night and said, right, tell me about this pea protein. And he said, we don't process pea proteins in this country.
Correct.
So I challenge you again on why you would give an example of something that we don't do in this country. But also a pea, it's a rotational crop. It's inconsistent in yields and in price. And it's not really growing largely here. It's more of a mid-Canterbury crop because it doesn't like wet soils. It needs drainage. So here in South Canterbury, yes, we do grow peas. We do on our farm, but it's used as a rotational crop rather than something that we pride ourselves on.
So there's a key issue here around the particular variety of peas that have been grown in Canada, which is not your standard field pea. So the benefits of it are the very, very low water consumption and the extremely low greenhouse gas emissions per kilo of protein.
But it needs a free draining soil, which we don't have.
Sorry, you what?
They need free draining soil.
They're growing very well in Canada. I would need to go into the detail on that, but they're growing them very extensively. And so that's just one of many examples of the alternative crops. There are something like 30,000 food crops that can be grown globally, and 5 are traded globally, make up 80% of what's traded. That's not the future. That's the past.
But it's sort of like you say that we're not listening and that we're not doing things, but the example in your presentation is around a particular crop that isn't utilised in this country, and I don't think South Canterbury needs to be the leading protein milk pea producer, do we? Is that what you think we should be doing?
I'm not trying to give answers. This is where I think we need a leaders group to fully assess what seem to be on the surface huge opportunities.
My last thing, the thing that you and I agree on, vegetarian for 29 years, so I'll just put that out there. But however, I think Beyond Meat, which is a massive American, you'll know Beyond Meat, who were supposed to be the leaders in the world of plant-based food. Interestingly, when you review their last 5 years, since, say, July 2019, a share was worth $234. The average price over the last 52 weeks has been $7.14. So it tells me that plant-based food and these Gen Zs, I don't know what they're eating, but it isn't, to me, it is not nice to eat. I do not like your plant-based foods. I'd rather eat whole food than anything else. So if you look at a company like that who is massive in the American market, they have, since 2019, it would say that no one eats that kind of food.
So 1 in 5 new businesses go belly up within 5 years. Sorry, 4 out of 5 go belly up.
The last 5 years stock market.
So the majority of companies don't survive beyond 5 years. So other companies like Impossible Foods are still doing fine. So there's good businesses. I say the Canadians wouldn't be building a 500,000 tonne per year pea protein plant if they didn't think there was real benefit in it. I use pea protein milk because A, it doesn't curdle when I put stewed fruit on it, and it tastes really good with muesli. And it's got very low emission footprint. And so I see myself as supporting that sector of the economy. Dairy farmers might say, well, I'm not supporting them. Well, I still have dairy milk in my coffee. So I think the range of opportunities is wider than what I have picked up that Venture Timaru is looking at. And look, I applaud what they're doing, but this stuff is coming in so fast, so much information. I just don't see it being processed and adequately addressed and widely publicised. So if a small group is doing it and has got a whole lot of really good information and nobody else knows about it, that doesn't help. So the Climate Leaders Group has to produce credible information, and it has got to be got out there so that all of us can say, hey, that bit matters to me and that bit matters to you. And that's not happening at the moment. So if we can perhaps append something to Venture Timaru, that's fine. I'm not hung up on any particular structure. And I know they're doing good work on sustainable as attainable, looking at the processing companies. What else could we put through those processing companies? Good stuff going on, but in my experience, it's not really scratching the surface. The pressure that's coming on globally, for example, who was looking at the 63 Scope 3 emission standards that are being developed around the world that represent 80% of our market? I haven't found any analysis of that, and I've looked really hard for it. And if those Scope 3 emission standards said we want products with X amount of emission and it wipes out our exports, they have every right to do that. So there's pretty much a global consensus at the moment that politicians globally will not make the right decisions for the climate, and that it will be economic choices that force us one way or the other. And the economic choices that I see increasingly being made overseas are very, very threatening to our animal industries. And I don't feel that our animal sector organisations like Beef and Lamb have really got their head around it. Kate Ackland, she's great, but she did a presentation to the Food Futures Conference last year. She was completely out of line with every other speaker because she was still arguing for on-farm sequestration of carbon, even though our overseas client says we won't recognise it. And they're still doing it. It's on their Facebook page. Sorry, I get pretty agitated about this because I don't see the action being taken.
You're right. Phil, I've got a question from Councillor Piddington.
Dr. Phil, you're obviously passionate, and we acknowledge that. This year we appointed a climate change advisor, so we are trying to get into the space. Why don't you just start a group? Why do you need 100K from us? I mean, I just don't get it. And 30-second answer, please.
So you think I should just do everything for nothing?
You arrived here and said you're happy to, so you said you'd volunteer your time, so I'm a bit confused. To me, you're pitching for a job again.
I'm not pitching for a job.
Okay, but we'll agree to disagree.
If we're going to do this properly, then I'm saying we need a group of leaders, not staff in the council. We need leaders who have got tens, hundreds of $1 million of skin in the game. And that's where I'd say I'd love to have someone like Michelle on board. Michelle and I disagree about a whole lot of stuff, and that's fantastic. But she's got skin in the game.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, we are at time now, so we'll pick that up in public forum items requiring consideration, so we'll touch on that at the end. Sorry, I know you wanted more time, but we need to keep going. So thanks, Phil, appreciate that.
That's fine.
No worries. Alrighty, we'll move now. Welcome Russell Lund up to speak to us. Yeah, go for it. Thanks, Russell, welcome. Just, just push the button and away you go.
Thank you, Mayor Bowen, Chief Executive and councillors. I'm Russell Lund, and I'm here today simply just to provide a bit of reassurance, really, to council, as I know you're considering the fate of the Theatre Royal and the library and the facility. So most of the larger projects in my career, I've been a cost engineer and a building contractor in Dunedin for nearly 30 years, and completed a lot of larger scale heritage work, including my first one was the Dunedin Public Art Gallery. We converted a DIC department store into a a great art gallery that 30 years on is still functioning very well and only now just looking to change out their mechanical systems and so forth. The Hocken Library in Dunedin, which was an old cheese factory, converted into a sort of a cutting-edge research and archive facility, and also the Early Settlers Museum. So I don't want to boast, but I just want to give you a little bit of context that that's been it's been my day job for a long time. And I'm purely here just to offer some reassurance and advice. And I just want to firstly start with a bit of scary arithmetic that the Dunedin City Council are grappling with behind closed doors, and that is that 15% compounded for rates rises gets you double rates in less than 5 years. I'm sure you probably all know that, but the scary truth for the Dunedin Council is they can't even balance their budget. They've borrowed the last 2 years and they're facing rates rises of over 20% and having to make some really hard decisions, as you are. So my first point I'd like to make is that I sincerely urge you not to follow the example of the Central Otago District Council last week, where they voted to accept a $42 million contract to go ahead with their community facility. They had previously looked at a $6 million refurbishment of their existing hall in 2016, and then had a very similar trajectory to your council about a debate about whether to refurbish, whether to build new. Then there was scope creep, and then they added in a museum facility, and the result is that they've just signed the contract for the largest ever project in Central Otago's history at a time of record rate rises. And furthermore, they have a budget of $1.7 million operating, which they have no idea about how to fund, which was the subject of last council's meeting. So if I can just offer some observations, primarily on the library, but mainly on the Theatre Royal. I hope you'll take it in the spirit in which it's offered. And that is someone who wants to see these buildings reused and can say with absolute certainty that no matter what your advice received to date, is that they can be done for far less than the budgets, which I understand are around circa $30 million for the Theatre Royal. Don't want to get into specifics today. I just want to point out a few things. Firstly, regarding the library, I know that there are issues with the library. Full disclosure, my father built it. He was there pouring concrete, built it, and battled with Sir Miles Warren, the architect. We can blame him for the leaks. And so I do understand that the roof is an issue, but I don't know if councillors are familiar, you probably are, of the particular roof structure. It has exposed steel trusses, and then of course it has connections to the big glulam beams in the interior space. And obviously those connection points are hard to waterproof, and there's been ongoing issues. That said, perhaps before you choose to spend any money, you might just want to consider a really increased maintenance period of sort of a year to 18 months, where you've got people who are knowledgeable and expert at maintaining those joints between the trusses and the roof, because I'm sure that with I'm talking about every 2 or 3 months, it might cost $1,000 every 2 or 3 months, but it might be a lot better than spending millions of dollars on a new roof. The other important point I want to note is that the library was built in 1977, and it's probably entering what I'd call its peak cultural cringe. You know, we look at it and it's a 70s building. In fact, it's a pretty unique building. You know, like there's not another library like that in New Zealand, and if you replace it, it isn't going to be to anything near the same, you know, I call it quality or distinctiveness. And it is part of Timaru, it has been for 50 years. You know, and I think that I think Mayor Bowen, that might have been Sam Stubbs, the head of Simplicity, might have said to you recently that if you demolish these buildings in Timaru, heritage and otherwise, you will live to regret it. And I agree with Mr. Stubbs. So in regard to the Theatre Royal, I think you've actually got a lot of positives. There's a lot of good things about the Theatre Royal that a lot of other similar heritage buildings, especially ones that I've worked on, don't have. The first thing, it's almost functioning. You know, it was functioning and it's been closed. The second thing is that you're you're not having to have a change of use. You're not trying to convert a cheese factory into a museum, and that's when you trigger a whole lot of building code upgrades. That's when you get scope creep. You don't need to do that. You have discretion about whether you want to increase extra toilet facilities, whether you want to do certain things. You're not obligated to do them because there's no change of use. But, you know, I guess the elephant in the room is the tension around the theatre groups and what they want to use the theatre for. Now, there is always going to be tension because obviously the theatre people and the groups want to get the best possible result. And I did speak briefly at the public meeting, and I said there's the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. You'll get 80% of the result with 20% of the cost. It's that last 20% that costs the money, and that's what you've got with your current scope and your current design. That you've got, you know, as one example, the extra lines capacity to so that in order that touring shows can come to the Theatre Royal. Now that's fine. That's causing millions of dollars of extra cost and complexity. That's just one example. So the question for council is that, you know, in your objectives, in the council's website about your objectives for the Theatre Royal, is that you wanted it to be to attract more touring production shows. So the point is that you can achieve a facility at significantly less than your existing budgets if there's an agreement that perhaps you're going to forego 1 or 2 shows a year, no more than that, and because they will go to Dunedin, to Invercargill, to Christchurch. And just as a point of reference, the amount of lines on that one item, which is driving a lot of cost, is very similar to the Dunedin Regent Theatre, which I understand has nearly 50 lines, and it's double the size. So the Theatre Royal, I understand, is 1,000 seats. The Regent Theatre is 1,800 seats, and so you're trying to compete with bigger centres. Now that's a question for council. Should you be doing that? And are you prepared at a time when all councils are fiscally constrained, facing record rate rises? Is that reasonable? Or should it simply be a theatre that's improved, that's fit for purpose, that can have some touring shows, but perhaps not the 80-20 rule? The other thing I would like to note about the use of the Theatre Royal, is that in London and other places now, there's less demand for physical stage sets. It's now more about video production. So the sets are actually created on video and streamed, so you're actually seeing not physical things that are hung from the lines. And that's not a thing that's far away. Like, for example, in Dunedin, Kavanagh High School produced their production recently with video streaming. You know, they didn't build sets. So, you know, that's another thing that, you know, so my suggestion is that to achieve an economic and a really successful outcome for Timaru, and to reuse your characterful cultural landmark that is the Theatre Royal, you simply need to have another discussion with the theatre groups, and you can set the budget to suit the scope. That's the great thing about a heritage building that's functioning, that I understand is already mostly strengthened to around 90% of new build standard. Right, there are things that you can defer and things you can do in the future, you know, when funds and when the financial position allows. There are certain things that you can't defer, the lines and any structural upgrades being one of them. And to that, I would just say that my understanding is it's the back of house areas that are deemed to be not up to new building standard, and so the idea is that we demolish and rebuild. My response to that is that I know that back of house can be easily strengthened to around 65 or 70, just looking at it. And it may not get to 100, but it's a question for council. Do you need to go that far? The banks accept, if you're funding for a commercial building, as long as it's 70%, I'm sure some of you know this, the banks will lend on that. They don't demand that you go to 100 and have never done so. So, and it's also really important to be in context about earthquake strengthening and what that drives, because even the Institute of Professional Engineers, on their website, they say it's important to consider the context. The chances of dying in an earthquake-prone building are 1 in 9.5 million. That's less than getting hit by a bus crossing the road. So yes, do what you can. So it's basically the engineers, even the engineers are telling people like the council and building owners, do what you can economically, but let's remember the 80-20, the Pareto principle rule. The other great thing about the Theatre Royal is that it's not a leaky building. And should you build a new facility, you could well end up with the same sort of issues that you've ended up with the library. And that's not facetious or, I'll give you an example with the Salvation Army built an award-winning auditorium by the same architect as it happened in Wellington. In 1990 it won the gold medal, and now the Army have had to sell it because there's simply no way to fix it. It was sold for demolition value. Likewise, a school in Clydevale was built 10 years ago. It's now being demolished. So to think that, a brand new rural primary school, 10 years old, it's been demolished. So there is a risk that new builds come with their own set of challenges, particularly if they become complex. So just lastly, I'd just like Council to consider what might happen to Timaru CBD should you not consider retain and refurbish the Theatre Royal. What message does that send to the other owners of heritage buildings in the CBD if the council's walking away from its landmark? I mean, as I understand, there's only one owner, the owner of the Grosvenor Hotel, who's actually gone ahead and strengthened their building in the Timaru CBD. And so if we're trying to encourage people to retain Timaru's Edwardian facade, which is a great thing, it's a great thing, and I see in the objectives in the whole redevelopment was that you wanted to make this facility a tourist magnet. Well, Dunedin finds that its highest and best tourist attraction is actually its heritage buildings, and there's no reason that Timaru with your Edwardian street can't be the same. So look, I think I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's basically all I wanted to say, that you can do this economically and for far less than you've been told.
Thanks, Russell. Appreciate that. That ties well with conversations we had this morning. Any questions? Yeah, Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Lund. My question is, and I'm thinking I misunderstood what you were saying, is that you would have seen this morning we were presented other options, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that.
No, I have not. I was travelling up.
But I wasn't sure if you were saying that once again we are scope creeping, that once again instead of sticking to our basics, just look at what the asset we've got, strengthen it, not move on. But, and so I'm not sure if you've looked at what we were presented today, so I'm just asking you, do you think once again we're getting ourselves into a position of scope creep?
Look, I'm not aware of what was presented this morning. I'm just simply saying generally, as projects develop, and you have to have a very firm rein, you have to, the consultant team has to have very clear objectives, very clear, and it's very easy for consultants to want to do what they consider best practice and to go to that 90% or whatever it is, and as I said, it always just comes back to the 80-20 rule. So all my remarks were predicated just purely on the fact that you've foregone the $57 million facility. You're now looking at options. That refurbishing the Theatre Royal is one of them, and I believe you're probably looking at another combined option. My view on scope is that the museum, which I didn't mention, it's not the time to do the museum now. It's simply that part of the scope that just needs to be parked.
So, Mr. Lund, there were options presented this morning, so I know you're passionate about the Theatre Royal, and I think we've come up with something, because I've heard you before, I've spoken to you before. I think our new option is in line with what you're saying. So I can walk you through that, and actually it would be great for you to walk through what we presented this morning to give me your views on that. So if we can do that at some point, it would be great. Yeah.
No, more than happy to, Chief Executive.
Cool. Further, Councillor Booth?
the way that we've been approaching it is probably more the standard way that a group like us would do that. We get consultants and we get advice, and then we get all these reports, and then we put stuff together. What would be the alternative approach in your mind, as in how we are approaching to get a better outcome, more economic outcome, that perhaps would kick something across the line that is more realistic?
Councillor Booth, it all comes down to the council's appetite for risk. So my latest project was a development of 30 apartments in an old warehouse in Dunedin for the Salvation Army. So we achieved that to be honest, at a cost that the minister couldn't believe, and it was in a hot market. And we did that because we took the risk. We worked with the major sub-trades and made it easy for them, and actually had a lot of them. We did it on time and material. So we didn't force, in a project like the Theatre Royal, especially in a overheated market, there's risk. Those sort of projects are dirty. You get messy and dirty, and nothing's plumb level or square generally, and so people always allow for the worst case scenario, and that's what you've probably got to date. Because if the council's willing to take some risk, you can, or you find, it's that rare thing. Can you find a contractor to take a design build, which I know is what you had, but it's about finding the right combination of consultants, because I don't believe that. I'll keep my opinions to myself about the present consultants, but you need to get people, consultants of a certain scale, who are basically owner-operators, who are hands-on, who you've had a long relationship with, and have someone that can be flexible. Like, for example, in our project, we had overruns and we had to change things, and we deleted certain things with the agreement of the client, and we did other things, and it was a success. So that's the answer. Is if you went and approached your local tradesman and got an hourly rate, I think you'd get a good result, but it would take really good management, and it takes someone with some experience doing and I'm sure there will be quite a bit of that capacity here in Timaru.
Sure. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. That's probably all time we've got for, unless there's a real pressing question. No, awesome. Thank you, Russell. Really appreciate you coming presenting. Righty. We go now to urgent business. So I've just got 3 items that I'll effectively want requests for reports on. So we'll tackle these at the end if you're okay with that. So it's ECAN rates consideration, what we want to do moving forward, conversation around an initial paper on unitary authority and pros and cons and around that. We've got RPS and some other things that we have concerns with. So, and I know others around Canterbury are considering those conversations. So I think it's probably time that we do some thinking on that. And the third one is the loss of revenue for trade waste and water with the Smithfield closure, and a report from the water team around what savings they're going to make in OPEX. So those effectively are 3 requests for future papers. So you guys comfortable that we discuss those at the end? So I'll move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder, Councillor Parker? Put the motion out. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So now go to urgent business, and we've got from Councillor Piddington update on local water done well, so we'll address that. Also, we've got stadium timing, where we're at, when that goes to tenders, etc., so the public understand that. And then Councillor Booth, you and I discussed earlier around the art gallery and what's out the front, etc. So we'll add that to minor nature as well. So everyone comfortable with those? And is there other, sorry, I apologise, local water done well, there was the stadium timing, and then there was just the sprinkler shed at the front of the art gallery. Sprinkler shed? Yeah. And, sorry, was there any other urgent or minor? Haven't covered everything? Okay, perfect. Move now to conflicts of interest.
It's just we've got Venture Timaru on the, so just that thing.
Yep, no, all good, just VT. We'll note you as well, yep, Alan for VT. Okay, no, that's perfect, thank you. 7.1 is minutes of the council meeting held on the 17th September 2024. Can I have a mover for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Booth. Councillor Jackson is the seconder. Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. Carried. Schedules on 8.1, firstly, the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. On page 20, I'm happy to move that from the Chair. Councillor Shannon, Councillor Oliver, beat Councillor Shannon. Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. 8.2, schedules of functions attended by the Chief Executive. I'll move that from the Chair again. Councillor Shannon, happy to second that. Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. We move now, we've done 9.1, we move to 9.2. So we've got a dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings policy hearing. So we're going to welcome Christopher Templeton to come and speak to us on his submission, and that's on page 24 of the paper. Thank you. Welcome, Christopher. Again, just push the button when you're ready to go, and the floor's yours.
Good afternoon, Councillor, Your Worship, Councillors, Council staff, members of the public both here and online. My name is Christopher Templeton. Waipori is my mountain, Taitakariki is my waterway. As you can see from my submission, which you'll probably have there, I consider that the proposed policy is lacking and that it does not recognise and allow for the special status of heritage buildings, both scheduled and listed. And for those councillors who are confused about the two terms listed and scheduled, confused but too afraid to ask, a scheduled building is one that is listed in a territorial authority's long-term plan, and a listed building is one that is listed by Heritage New Zealand's Te Angapora on the official national record. So in the definition of the policy of dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings, the definition of the heritage buildings is lifted from the section 1 and 2 from the Building Act 2004. However, I would also ask that section 5 of the Act's definition is also given, which is a place or part of a place that is included in a schedule of a district plan because of its heritage value. That definition is sort of missing from the policy. I would like to see that it put in, because the only mention of a scheduled building in the policy is under the policy statement clause 14. So I'd like to see either clause 5 of the Building Act added to the definition, or a clause listing that scheduled buildings are also included in the definition of heritage buildings. It just clarifies the terminology there and makes it a bit more clear for those reading the policy and who they don't actually read as far as clause 14, because it is rather dry. To the matter of the treatment of heritage buildings under the policy, I consider it short-sighted to treat heritage buildings the same as any other building when it comes to dangerous and affected or unsanitary buildings. There are over 20,000 buildings in the Timaru district, and of those, only 55 are listed buildings, and there are only 113 scheduled buildings, with another 65 proposed in the proposed district plan, which hasn't yet been put into place. They're an endangered species, acknowledged by the public as their taoka, their treasure, and the owners have the role of kaitiaki, a guardian, a custodian of that building. If a heritage building is determined to be dangerous, affected or unsanitary, I would like to see that both Heritage New Zealand, if it's a building on the list, or the general public, a consultant about the building, unless there's no immediate threat to life. Recognising that the principle of the Building Act is to identify a danger and to fix or remediate it. If possible, I'd like to see an extra clause added to the policy stating that for a heritage building, that demolition is definitely a last resort, and that remediation required would be to stabilise or make safe the building without compromising its heritage material or its structure. Otherwise, I see a furtherance of the practice I can see up and down the Motu at the moment, which is known as demolition by neglect, where a heritage building is left to rot or decay by the owner until the building is declared unsafe by its territorial authority. It's declared a dangerous building and then is demolished. It's something, our heritage buildings are rare and fragile. I don't want them to become extinct. Any questions?
Thanks, Christopher. Any questions? No, I think we'll pick that up with officers shortly, but yeah, appreciate you submitting on that. Thank you. Yep. Alrighty, I'll welcome now our officers. We've got Brendan and Jason. Welcome. Don't be shy, team.
Good afternoon, Council. So the purpose of this report was for you to be able to hear from Mr Templeton and to receive the written submissions. Jason, myself and other officers will, in preparation for the deliberations and final adoption of the policy, consider the written submissions and the material presented today as part of the hearing to prepare some officer commenting, potential proposed amendments and the like, and that's proposed to go to you at the December Council meeting. What would also be useful is if anything has come out of those submissions or the oral submission Mr Templeton just made that you would like officers to investigate in any particular detail so that we can prepare that information for you for December.
Thank you. And so I spoke with Chris Thomas, who's in the audience, with his age concern head on yesterday, and he didn't have time to submit, but I think his probably key point was picked up in 24 of the health submission, which was around interagency groups. And some regions have been set up to provide pathways for referral, and so probably the key thing was, and concern was, the state's guidelines and information to ensure that people living in severe domestic squalor are assisted in a consistent, sustainable and efficient way. But obviously, I think the key concern from him was around how this policy helps support those that might be living in those environments and what is the support mechanism, or how does that refer to it. And there's been, as the health submission points out, that there's been interagency groups, so it might not set out in this policy, but it might be something worth referring to as far as an outcome and where we refer that particular point to. Cool. So you really just need us to receive and note? Yeah, sorry. Oh, apologies. Questions? Councillor Pye.
What I'd find useful in that final report, and you may have included it in the initial report, but I can't remember, is how other councils deal with heritage buildings and just some examples from up and down the country. Is it something normal or totally unusual? Nobody else separates them. Thanks.
Sorry, she's got it.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, I was just interested what Councillor Pye said actually, but with regards to the health submission, which I thought was very, very good actually, and as was Mr Templeton's, are they, our obligations under the Health Act, for example, are they covered elsewhere, and does it just need to be referenced to that, or if we have acts and duties here, then should they really be within this? Because I'm not keen on duplication, because as soon as you start doing that, you change one thing, you miss it over here. But should it be referenced? Because I thought they were good submissions.
Yes, that's a great question. And the simple answer and the quick answer is yes. We will make reference, and so appreciate the feedback that has been given. The purpose of the process is to gain that feedback because you can't think of everything. So it's good to have those points of view, and we will certainly look at making those slight adjustments and amendments to the policy.
Perfect, thank you. Anything from this side? No, that's cool. So we'll go to recommendations. One is notes all the written submissions. Two acknowledges Mr Templeton, who's spoken to a submission. And then three is notes the feedback. So happy to move that. Councillor Shannon, thank you. Councillor Pye. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. Thanks, team. And thanks for those that have taken the time to be involved with that. Move now to 9.3 on page 36, which is accidents register, actions register. Been speaking too much. Okay, so I had some notes on this. So first one is budget reallocation trial. September, this will remain on here until such time as report at which review layout for approval on that. Sorry, no. Yeah. So I guess the key one is, are we still, it's probably a question for senior leaders, are we still living by that rule as far as any budget reallocation? Is that coming through to elected members? Is that being reported on?
We've only had one, and that was to the Infrastructure Committee, with moving that CapEx money from the covers to the plant.
Yep.
There's been no other reallocation of budget at this stage.
Okay, perfect. Okay, sub-trades, I know there's been some action on this, and I know, Mr. Trainee, you can probably speak to this. I just note the street sweeping business case, Andrew, that we'd talked about has been completed with a recommendation to status quo. I think through this process, I know it's officer-led, but I think it's key that these come through to elected members so we can see that they've been considered. And I would also like to see, I know some of this will be long-term as contracts will be more than, multi-years, but 5 years is too long. I would like to see a plan of what can be done through to June next year, so end of the financial. And yeah, if need be, whether it's to come back to full council or it can be a delegated group of councillors to just have consideration, so we can see any sort of business case, etc., that comes through. I'm happy to receive any thinking from the field, but I think we need to have visual over this. Any comments, or you're comfortable with that direction? Yep, cool. Steve, you pick that up. Yep. Okay, cool. Move into small trades. There again, I know there's been...
So there's a crossover here with the one above.
Yeah.
So we've done analysis on electrical services, and that's showing there would be an advantage to bringing in-house electricians and cleaning. We're also, there's been a cost of that. It's now separating the specialist cleaning from the BAU cleaning, and they are different, and that's getting worked on as well. So it's clear that there is an advantage there. We're also now looking, so the two of them are sort of intertwined.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. The electricians, we can bring that to you next meeting. It's quite obvious. There's quite a spend. You've got to separate their spend from CapEx to operational. A lot of the CapEx spend with electricians is part of the capital program, and it probably stays there, whereas the OPEX probably comes in-house. Cleaning, there is a variety of ways we do cleaning. Some is staff and some are contracted out, and it depends on the facility. So we're just working out which is the best way to go.
Can we pull, and I know across property and other things, can we bring the maintenance painting into that? And
yes, we're doing that. Yeah. We're looking at carpentry. We're looking at building carpentry and painting, and plumbing. So we're looking at the lot.
Okay, perfect. So maybe in this next update, can we just include, if they're coming through slowly, can we just have a timeline, estimated timeline through to June, just so we can tick it off as we go? Everyone comfortable around that? Yep, cool. Next one is underutilised assets. Sort of again for me, it's just so we could note a plan on this. I think the update was, it was yeah, I think the key thing is maybe a bit of a timeline in around it.
Yeah, this one's gone on the back burner while we've been trying to work up the Theatre Royal.
Yeah,
And
no, I
other
understand
infrastructure, so we'll get a timeline.
No, that's fine. Cool. Financial template we talked about the last time was just to stay there until we've seen it come through. Social housing, we've got another report due. Then asset management. And that role is actually live on the recruitment, I think, isn't it? Yep. It's up, I saw. Sorry, stop me, team, if there's any questions. Council properties. The only other thing was that we talked about the last time was around the requirement, or do we need a divestment policy? And I think we'd talked about the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, we're looking at a policy on that, mirroring WAMAX policy.
Okay, perfect. If you can steal one, that's great. Yep. Coastal erosion, there's stuff today. Parks Capital Grant.
So the coastal erosion, that was presented at the Infrastructure or the Environment Committee. There was a report presented. Sorry?
No, it's today.
Oh, it's on today?
Yeah, we've got it today. Yeah. Yeah. It's all right, you're getting ahead of yourself. Yeah, no, it is today. Parks Capital Grant, we've confirmed the removal, so that can disappear. And I guess these probably, as they remove, just goes to the minutes, and then they can just be confirmed and then deleted for the next time. Then we need to go to, what one was that? I know, done that. And then the parks budgeted, that can come off too and go to minutes. Monthly financials. It's been some progress there. Was there any more further comments on that one? Because you got annual report, is there?
Yeah, I was going to say, it needs to stay there, and I get the issues. I understand what happens over audit, but to not have financials from May and then the next lot we get in September is a long time between drinks.
Yeah, I think they're really simple.
I don't know what the answer is, but
Even
we need to find an
that simple
answer.
one-pager that we got.
That was good, even if we're getting something like that
just
in
something,
between.
if there's an absence of the full details, just a one-pager would be helpful, wouldn't it?
I've committed to that. The monthly financials will go to the council meetings. It's stock standard practice.
Cool, all good, sorry. Just jump in if I don't see. Special funds, that's removal as well. To confirm, yep, so that's confirmed. You're all happy with that? Yeah, library report is tidied up. So library and the museum reports, I think we can take off because they're going to be tied up. So you're comfortable with they can move to minutes for next time? Yeah, Councillor Pennington.
I'd just like to get one more added or a report somehow. To be honest, I was horrified when we got the report on both the library and museum. The deferred maintenance came to $4.5 million. We had a similar situation last year with the stadium when we finally got a report. It was about $1.5 million. So I want to know who's actually looking after our property. Is it individual units or does it sit under someone? Because I can't believe no one's looked at those buildings till now and had those sort of problems. So obviously we have no maintenance problems for large buildings. I'm worried have we got them for any buildings?
Currently, the maintenance of buildings belong in the units of which use them. So your community services buildings sit in community services, that being your pools, your library, your museum. The buildings related to infrastructure sit in infrastructure, and the buildings relate to corporate sit under Nicole. Now, that's how it's been and that's how it is at the moment, and that's where it sits. Obviously, Nicole works closely with, is starting to work a lot more closely with Beth, but that's where it sits.
Is that an ideal situation, though, in business units that don't have any expertise in the area?
We did talk some time ago around the ideal would be to have it sitting within the property portfolio. That's going back some years. And I think that's where, under the previous chief executive, I thought we were heading. I'm not saying that it was right and wrong, but it would be worth doing some analysis on what that looks like, is I think what you're asking, Councillor Biddington, isn't it? Because we've,
Yep.
I mean, the theatre...
It just seems to get lost through
Yeah.
to the CE, you know. When you saw those reports in your previous roles, would that have been acceptable to have that sort of amount of deferred maintenance? Because no one's looked at those buildings.
My previous role will be the same, and those buildings were sitting in one unit.
Yeah, so isn't there a...
So both ways you've got the same problem, and it gets down to your budget. So right at the moment in our LTP, there is very little budget for maintenance.
I accept that, but that's wrong, isn't it? I mean, we've got the same problem with the Geraldine Theatre, there's buildings in Temuka. By just ignoring it, the problem doesn't go away. We've got to be real about this stuff.
I agree. Yep, I agree.
So how do we solve it?
We'll have to make sure, Councillor Scott's right, we're getting building conditions done. We're also getting staff trained on asset management for those buildings. So Beth's doing quite a lot of work with her staff on training them on asset management. Where they sit should be irrelevant. It's more about making sure we've got the budget and the people trained and the systems in place.
I think from our point of view, the key one is that we have governance oversight of it and, yeah, agree budget, but we need to understand if we're pulling money back at an LTP, you know, that actually it's going to affect specific maintenance on a specific program. So somehow we need, it's a little bit like those infrastructure projects that's tied up into one sort of report. It may not be that easy, but actually maybe it's a quarterly report about maintenance spends, where we're at to date, etc., and have that sort of rolling through, and let's understand where the deficit is. But as far as an action, Councillor Biddington will just request that some further work is done, or maybe just a proper update on where we're at. I know Beth's team's done a bit of work on that, and I know, so maybe we request, out of an action, we request a report where we're at and where we're heading.
I guess we kind of get out of jail because we're pulling money back out of a larger theatre project, but if we didn't have that...
Yeah, that's more capital money. Somehow we have to build the maintenance into our OPEX.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's not
though.
there. So it's quite a different line, and that has a direct effect on your bottom line. So we're going to actually have to get the status of the buildings, ensure we've got budget for the maintenance, which is a challenge to us right at the moment because we're borderline deficit. So we have to work out how do we pay for that. And you're right, it's vital. You know, you just got to go up to the sea bays. You've got a person maintenance on staff who's looking after the plant, but you start looking at that building, it's starting to show its age pretty quickly.
And partly that's the benefit of bringing some of those, having that maintenance team to an extent. You'll still have bigger works but back in-house, so you can actually have it programmed better.
I think as you graduate and you start bringing maintenance tradespeople back in-house, that's the time to bring it all together. So they're going out and doing the right work. I know in the DHBs we had the same setup. There was always tension there as well. The tension changed. It was between the operational staff and the maintenance team, because the maintenance team still had a constrained budget and the operational staff were pushing at them to do more and more. So we need to get that balance right.
Already so. Good enough there, Steve, as far as an action. Yep, cool. Okay, so someone happy to move the actions update register? Councillor Jackson, Councillor Burt, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Go now to 9.4 on page 46, and that is release of public excluded items. I don't assume there's any discussion. It's been done. It's just a note. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Pye. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 9.5 on page 47 is proxies. For that one is VT. So we'd need it would normally be myself, and then next would be the Deputy Mayor as sort of protocol. We're happy to move those. Yeah, Councillor Booth, Councillor Scott. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry, that was TDHL. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, thank you. I know something. Yeah, you're looking at me saying I've got it wrong. Next one is VT. Council proxies again. Suggest myself and Councillor Shannon. Again, thank you. Councillor Parker is the mover. Councillor Burt is the seconder. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. We'll move now to adoption of meetings calendar. 51, there's two different options that you would have looked through. There were some reasons around the two different versions. One was one for more regular council meetings was around controlling length of meetings, because our meetings are getting a little bit longer. Also the ability to have frequency, so urgent items can come through, and also that alignment with financials. Thank you, Councillor Pye. But happy to take questions, comments. Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, just a question surrounding potentially more frequent or coming to monthly, and I'm only mindful of perhaps any pressure that might put on officers, if that's a real concern or not, or does it actually spread it across more meetings? I just hate the idea of, if they're too close together, are you spending an awful lot more time preparing for meetings than working as such? Maybe, or not?
Through the Chair, I think it would be setting the expectations for the meetings coming to council meetings. If they were happening more frequently, it would be less likely that a report could be written for the next meeting as such. So it might be the next but one, but it would mean with the meetings being slightly closer together, as a rule, the ability to report is more frequent. But then there is there's swings and roundabouts with this one, because with the monthly council meetings, there's fewer standing committee meetings, but as your committees of the whole, it's not that significant difference.
So I think the one I was referring to was 4.2, but did any committee chairs have any thoughts to the contrary, effectively? Or deputy chairs, anyone? Yeah, Councillor Jackson, thanks.
I was just here what said options and preferred option. There isn't a preferred option.
No.
So is that up to us to decide only? Okay, cool.
Yeah, the training wheel's taken off. We can make our own decision.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy with either one, to be fair. But number 2 looks good to me, because some of the dates are regular, and I like stuff that's regular, so it works for me. But whatever works for anybody else is fine.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor.
If you went with
a new citizen.
Yes, Citizen Doran. If you went with the version 2, the one amendment that we want to make due to the RMA hearings changing, or we got them wrong, is that would probably move the standing committees into the week after Easter, because the RMA hearings are afterwards. Sorry, that's on version 1. Version 2 is fine.
That was actually, and it's proposed district plan hearings, not RMA hearings, isn't it? But yeah, I would strongly advocate for them to stay in the calendar. There is so much work that goes on by the communities, and they're all in concrete, so sort of. So yeah, I definitely.
Yeah, no, 100% they can't be moved.
Yeah, let's not muck with that system.
Yeah, so I'm happy to move 4.2 subject to minor amendments. How does that sound? Councillor Pye, thank you. No further discussion? No, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Going now to 9.8, I forgot that my wife has so we've got temporary liquor control area, and I might just pass you, Councillor Scott, and I'll declare a conflict, because I forgot that we've got a beer tent or something there. So can you add that, Steve? Thanks. And I'll pass to you. Councillor Shannon, I had it on the wrong page, apologies.
You're confusing me, Nigel. And on that note, I'll pass this over to Mr Keeper, shall I?
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'll just present the report as is and be happy to answer any questions. And when I say be happy, I mean, of course, Sharon, as Chief Licensing Inspector, would be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Sorry, I just have one question. Sorry.
Councillor
Councillor
Pike.
Piddington was trying to talk me through the finances. Was there a problem we're trying to solve here? Did something go wrong last year, or or was this in place last year and it's just business as usual? That's all I want to understand. I'm not against it. I just want to understand it.
Okay, so it wasn't in place last year because we didn't get the request from the police in time last year. Previous year it was, and we had no problems. Last year also we were lucky in a roundabout way because the weather was not that flash. So we're just preempting the risk that may be there. Yeah.
Councillor Jackson.
Sorry. Same thing happened at the Botanic Gardens a few years ago. It was the same deal, I think, wasn't it? That people were just passing alcohol outside who didn't pay to get in, and there was all sorts of dramas. It was the front page of the paper, and it got nationwide coverage.
Of course.
Thank you. Councillor
My
Scott.
question is just, I was confused at the way that the police letter is written. It's saying they support Timaru District Council to have a band, and I was confused. I mean, I don't care who it is, but is it us or is it the police?
I think it's a combination, so it's between police, the actual applicant and council as well, so it's a joint venture. Yeah.
I think we have the bylaw,
Yeah.
and they have the power to exercise the powers under that bylaw. Yeah.
Thank you. No more questions. It was moved by Councillor Burt, seconded Councillor Jackson. All those in favour, please say aye. Approved, carried. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Move now to 9.9 on page 63, which is the 3-month financial performance report. Mr Trainer.
So, apologies for Andrea, she's learning about rates in Christchurch. So present the financial report as read. So if you look on page 65 of the table there, so our revenue, we're 93K below budget. It's mainly driven through subsidies and grants that are behind, particularly LTU, which there is a different amount coming from there in different timing, but that's offset by fees and charges and some development and financial contributions. Personnel costs are slightly over. In our budgets, we have a vacancy factor, and we have virtually no vacancies. So we're down to about 7 vacancies, which is below, hovering around the 2% mark. It's not long ago we were up around 12 to 14%. Also, there's potentially a bit of a timing issue with the budgets, which may show its head when we employ our summer staff for pools. Finance costs are, depreciation is cost bang on budget as they should be. Finance costs are lower. The point I made to Andrea is we're slightly higher than last year, but we have more borrowings. We had lower interest rates, so there's a net positive variance there. And other expenses, we've got a positive variance there, mainly around I've got to think what it was, can't even think. Mainly consultancy costs around a number of areas, such as our corporate activities and so forth. All the other reports are tabled there for each different department, 67 to 69 to 77. I think when you look at these, I've got question marks all over the place. And when you look at this, the vast majority of our staff sit in corporate. So we're going to actually have to start looking at unbundling them to the right services. So, as an example, when you look at our, I'll pick on roading. and footpaths, it says we've got $94,000 worth of staff. Well, actually, there's a whole crew out there. They all should be in here. They should all be in that area. Same with water and so forth. So for the annual plan coming up, we need to unbundle those to the right areas. I also tried to do some work with the annual report. I gave up within no time because the chart of accounts is foreign to me. It's actually quite unusual. When I talk through that with Andrea, it's decades old. It's been added to, and quite frankly, in my mind, it's not a modern chart of accounts. So we've got some issues there. Also, I'm quite concerned we've got authority, which Justin has just left the room, perfect timing. It's well used across the world for local authorities. However, it doesn't, right at the moment, we don't have a reporting tool over the top of it. I can't sit in my office and drill down into financials, and nor can any of the other officers. So we've got a real problem there in that we rely on spreadsheets. So we've got to change that. But in saying that, we've got an overall small surplus of 219 against a budgeted deficit of 3 million. So at the end of September, we're actually doing relatively well. CapEx is behind. I know that Andrew's going to be giving water and roading a bit of a push along. Recreational leisure, that would be more related to the buildings, in that through the LTP they were planned to be getting started. So they're the main three areas. Any questions?
Councillor Pye.
Firstly, if you'd like to pass on to Andrea, thank you for changing the report. It is so much better having the description of the variance next to the variance and not in the commentary at the front, so you're going back and forward. So fantastic. My normal old bugbear is waste again, and the waste expenses are 329 above budget, and I just, we started off in this position last year. Are we going to end up with a $1.3 million deficit here again, or a cost blowout again? And it's every year since I've been here, this is an issue, and it concerns me, because if we're blowing out the expenses, we're not charging enough for our rubbish collection.
I'll get Andrew to come and speak to that.
You should be well prepared, because I ask it just about every meeting.
Thank you. Well, as far as the waste here is, we are a bit ahead of the budgets, yeah, but we are aiming to bring that back into line. That I can assure you. There is some things that are happening in advance earlier on, and then we'll pull it back later on. So, we believe we have it budgeted correctly. Yeah, there's a commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Sorry. Councillor Piddington.
Just in corporate activities, internal loan interest is 824 below, and corporate services below budgeted. Is that just a movement?
Is this
corporate activities?
Yes.
Finance cost, internal interest.
Do you know something? I asked Andrea, and she gave me a reason, and for 3 days I've driven home thinking, wonder what that meant. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Well, I guess if I multiply it by 3 like Michelle, I'm up to 2.4 mil. I think we talked about the district plan consultancy fees, but what's the final overspend going to be there? Because we're at 188,000 with hearings still to come.
Thank you, Councillor Piddington.
A small portion. couldn't possibly comment on that. It's a phasing issue. So we're actually going to, if we take the budget out to the end of the financial year, we'll actually, at the moment, we're looking at coming in under budget. Okay, just that'll be handy to know, phasing issue beside it, because it takes it off the hit list. Thank you.
Councillor Piddington, I've got an answer for you. So if you look at corporate, it's 1217 versus a budget of 63. Then when you go through each of the other departments, pick on roading, 186 versus 653 budget, a positive of 467. So what has happened there is the journal to allocate them to all the other departments has not happened.
Just two more, I think. In sewer development and financial contributions, we've got income, which is great, 162,000, but it says it was not budgeted for. So what is that income and why?
Again, I'll get, it'll be a financial contribution to some infrastructure. Andrew, do you want to answer what it is? Because that's part of the 350 and the consolidated.
I think we might have to come back on that. We'll just make a note.
Yeah, no, it's okay, but it's numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did question Andrea because I thought it was part of the vested assets, but it isn't. It is actual cash.
And another one, Councillor Piddington.
And my last one, when I can find it, it was over the vehicles bought for parks, was quite a bit over. Hang on, I've just got to go back. I'm just trying to find it. Oh, it's in corporate activities, right at the bottom, 374, new vehicles purchased for parks, CapEx higher than budgeted. So did we get more vehicles? Did we not budget for it? Is someone driving a Rolls-Royce Silver Phantom? I don't know. That's a type of lawnmower, Michelle said.
I said it might be a lawnmower.
Basically, when the LTP was prepared, the $540,000 was basically for replacement of council's fleet at that time. Now, if you recall, when we put up the Section 17A review to council, we indicated there that we would need another $1 million in capital expenditure, which council approved. So that, of course, wasn't in the original budget. That's been added since.
So if we've approved it, why is it an overspend?
Well, we're reporting against the LTP budget. So it's a reforecast, effectively. Yeah.
Okay.
Which
Well,
will
if we could have a
through.
note to that effect as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew.
Councillor Shannon. And then we'll come over this side.
Thank you. Probably another notes thing, actually. Looking through the CapEx being well under, just in terms of transparency, I just can't quite tell how much of that is a timing issue, other than obvious ones like stadium and theatre, versus how much of it is actually good work. Because if you to read through what's happening in footpaths and roading, for example, it comes across to me that these guys are working really, really hard to save us some money. Or is it a timing issue?
I think at this stage it'll be timing. It's a really good point. We can adjust that report by having a mix of timing and cost. So when we're under on cost or we're over on cost, we can actually show that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Still doing good work,
Just over this side, we're going to go to this side. Councillor Jackson.
Just a couple of things, I think mainly for clarity for me, really. But just on page 69, governance and strategy, elected members' salaries, we're out by 73,000. Why is that? How does that work? I mean, we all know what. But I don't understand that. Sorry. So can you clarify that for me?
So it's from the previous one.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Okay. And the other thing was, I don't understand the downlands contributions. So how does that work on page 75? No downlands contributions received. So is that is another end of year thing, is it? Is that, no? How does that work? Oh, cool, thank you.
Just trying to find the actual line, but yeah, the downlands contributions are the contributions that receive when we connect new customers. So when the downlands scheme was upgraded, there were some new units available, new water was available. Attached with that is a contribution towards the, I guess, that treatment plant and the new reticulation. Now, we haven't had any applications come through yet for that. There's not the take-up that we anticipated. And also, with the revised capital budget, a lot of money was removed from the budget, or funding was removed from the budget for upgrading of water mains for the downlands. So some of the people in that scheme can't get the extra water that they want, so therefore the applications are declined. So we're not likely to receive very many contributions from downlands. But it is demand driven.
Awesome. Good questions. Anyone else over this side? No? Councillor Booth? All good? Yeah, Councillor Pye.
I kind of feel like I probably know the answer to this, but on the face of it, it looks like we've borrowed money to put it in the bank, which never makes good economic sense. So, because in here, from the last quarter, we've borrowed another 14.5 million. It looks to have gone into other financial assets and cash deposits, because it definitely hasn't gone into a capex, because we haven't spent a lot.
My understanding,
why would we do something
my
like
understanding that's to do with our covenants through the, you've got to have so much working capital.
Alrighty, all pretty good. Good questions, team. So we'll move to recommendation. The council receives and notes the 3-month provision financial performance report update for the period 1st July to 30th September. Move it, Councillor Piddington. Councillor Pye, perfect, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. I'm just going to move that the meeting is extended past 2 hours. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Oliver, thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. We'll go now to 9.10, which is Waitarika strategy. Welcome Mr. Cooper and Chris. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors, although it's got my name as author on this paper, actually the author was Bridget Lang, who's with us online from ECAM. So I suppose I'd just like to some opening comments, and then I'll hand over to the guys who have come to us to visit from ECAM. But my overall assessment of this as a project is it's an example of what can happen when agencies and organisations come together with a positive mindset and work well. I think when we've agreed to align where we can, and where we've not been able to, we've agreed to compromise, and I think that's been one of the great things about this project. Also, the working groups worked in a similar vein underneath the guidance of the steering group. But having said that, we'll take the report as read, and I'll hand over to Bridget, who's online, who might say a few words. Thanks.
Kia ora. Kia ora everyone, and thank you, Paul. Firstly, I'd just like to start by thanking Timaru District Council and the other partners for their ongoing support of this project. It's been a long and thorough process to get to this point, and it's involved numerous staff at various times, as well as our regular contributors, as Paul said, to the working group and the steering group. There've also been multiple occasions where we've brought this project to this council, and we appreciate the ongoing consideration councillors have given to the project. As Paul said, we're going to take the paper and the strategy supplied as read. So we won't take too much of your time. We want to leave a little bit of time for questions. However, we do want to highlight a couple of key points within the strategy development process, and then I'm going to hand to Chris, and he's going to talk a little bit about the strategy itself. However, before I do so, I want to draw your attention to an editing mistake in the version of the strategy that is in your agenda pack. My apologies, we only picked this mistake up at the weekend, and so we do apologise. But please note that the wording will be corrected in the final version of the strategy, aligned with what was agreed by the steering group. So we are seeking the adoption of the strategy that was approved by the steering group, and that version was the correct one. But we ask that this is just perhaps noted in the minutes for this meeting. So on page 20 of the strategy itself, which is page 103 of your agenda pack, under the ongoing actions bit that starts with the sustainable increase in expected natural range of ecosystem cover, that first paragraph, unfortunately, we're not quite sure how this happened, but we've got the wrong wording. So what that should actually say, aligned with what has been agreed within the partnership, is sustainable increase in the expected natural range of ecosystem cover within the catchment, with an intergenerational ambition of 15% of the catchment land coverage being returned to Indigenous dominant healthy ecosystems. This effort will focus on public and or marginal non-productive land that is voluntarily made available through the Goodwill for this purpose. Such ecosystems will be broadly classified as those contributing positively towards strategy outcomes 1 and 2. So not a fundamental change in meaning, just a little bit change in how it's worded. So just a couple of things I'd like to say before handing to Chris is that this project, this Our Waitākā project, has been a really great news story for all involved. The 4 partners to this project have collaborated genuinely and effectively, and have talked extensively with the community in the development of the strategy. It's been a chance. The strategy development process has been a chance for mana whenua, stakeholders and the community to consider fundamental questions around the future of this catchment. And they have in turn responded to this opportunity by contributing their time and knowledge and ideas very generously. This means that we've had a really positive response from the community and a really high level of engagement. The key thing that we have heard throughout this engagement is that this is a really special place and it needs to be protected. The phased approach to community engagement not only provided vital feedback and ideas, but it also created opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives to come together. It is these opportunities to meet, discuss, work together that has enabled the community to find common ground and shared aspirations for the catchment. It is these values and aspirations that became through the lens through which we worked with the community to develop the options and the strategy itself, just highlighting how much this was a collaborative effort. Another thing I'd like to point out is the impact of the engagement in and of itself, and that is that the community, whether that's been, farming, business, recreational, residential, advocacy groups or educators, have been able to put input genuinely into the content and the tone of the document. We found that the many events, community workshops and other activities during the engagement process have led to really positive interactions between ourselves and the community. But also it led to really positive interactions between different sectors of the community with each other. These community relationships that have been formed through this process have already proven to be a really positive outcome of this project, and we are already seeing community-led action aligned with the strategy objectives and the outcomes. And I'll just pass to Chris to talk a little bit about some of the strategy itself.
Sorry, I'll get the microphone. I just thought it worthwhile, again, like Bridget, I don't want to talk too long and take the document as read, but I thought it'd just be worthwhile just to talk very quickly about hopefully this being adopted, and then our move into actions and what we're sort of intending to do over the first part of the strategy. I think it's just quite useful. The tone of this document, if hopefully you've picked up, is that we're really looking for a sustainable project that lasts through time. We want small and incremental actions that are co-invested and shared between everybody, that lead to an overall big change once they're given the time for that to happen, and once they're repeated regularly. So the whole strategy is sort of geared towards that shared contribution, not leaning on any one agency or on any one part of the community, and trying to make actions that are manageable for all and repeatable. So what we're already seeing, as Bridget sort of hinted towards, are sort of community-led efforts where property owners are volunteering pieces of land, where we're looking at planting type restoration, where we're looking at weed control, pest control, all of those little actions. And those things we hope will form the baseline of this project, and there'll be things that we can just continue to do. One action at a time, multiple actions a year, and then just repeat that year on year and year. And then sort of coupled with that in this first 2.5 years now it'll be, of the project heading in towards the next LTP cycles, we're really trying to look at investigating those sort of bigger ticket items, which for this project will be most significantly what to do with the actual lagoon itself, which is a whole highly modified environment. So scoping, investigating the feasibility, coming back with options and costs and things around what we could do there. And the plan with that is really just to make ourselves ready to take any funding opportunity that might come up in the future. So whether that's the next LTP cycles, whether that's from central government, from private contributions, or from all of the above, that's sort of how we're working on those two scales, the small repeatable community-led actions and the investigative scoping work leading into this next sort of phase of the project. As Bridget indicated, we've built up a really good lot of goodwill and momentum with the community, so there are actions already sort of starting to happen, and ones that we've been managing to kind of get underway with contributions from various people. So we have a planting planned in a couple of weeks, for example, where contributions to that day will be coming from landowners, from the project itself, from Environment Canterbury's budget, from the general community in terms of volunteering, and from hopefully, just got to dot the last I's, but hopefully an industry contribution as well. So that real partnership of all the different sectors of the community working together. So that's how we look to operate, and we look forward to hitting the ground running if you adopt our strategy.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Bridget. Online, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and Chris as well. It's fantastic, and as Paul alluded to, a really good piece of collaboration. Questions from the team? Councillor Booth.
What do you got in the budget for this project?
From
Canterbury.
From Environment Canterbury. So we've got a 3-year budget which enables us to do that investigative work that we've committed to in that first 3 years, to make contributions to the pest control and to the planting. We hope to not do that entirely on our own. We can do so much with our budget, probably in the order of 4 to 5 property level planting efforts, but we want to maximise that out by getting contributions from landowners, by industry, from like that. Carry out the investigative work needed on the lagoon, the comms and other support and the labour support for the project, that sort of thing. But yeah.
A line item in your budget that says an amount of money.
Yeah, so we're about 100,000 per year for the first.
Councillor Oliver, then Councillor Pye.
Oh, I just think this is an awesome thing you're doing. I mean, we've seen it through what the Irari guys do up the Irari River and the difference it's made up there through work like this and those stakeholder engagements and stuff. And I'm looking forward to how this will look in 10 or 15 years, and it's a really important part of the district, I think, that lagoon, and it's great that we're taking care of it.
Might be a documentary opportunity, do you think? Okay. Councillor Pye.
I'd probably endorse those comments. I was pretty sceptical of this strategy, given my experience with the Rakitata one. But this is a great example, and I think The team did a really good job of managing some of the pushback, because I was worried as a council that we need to be careful what we wish for, and that by being a partner to the strategy might limit our growth or our stormwater output and all of those things, how we interact as a community with the lagoon. And I think where we've landed is actually really good, so well done, because like I said at the start, I wasn't convinced.
Thank you. And as for those processes you mentioned, we actually think we can help those, and by collaborating we can get better outcomes for those same processes.
Anyone we're missing? No? Pretty good. That's part of a long day, I think, but yeah, thank you. Look, great collaboration, and we look forward to our teams working together closely on this, and it's just, it's the start, isn't it? A lot of work to do, so appreciate all your work, and thanks, Bridget, for joining us online. So we'll now go to recommendations. One adopts our Waitaraka strategy and notes the strategy was formally endorsed by our Waitaraka Strategy Development Steering Group on the 27th of September 24. And do we need to just note maybe some minor edits will occur? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Parker, Councillor Burt, seconder. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming in. We are 9.11, City Town update. Rosie and Andrew. That's on page 124. Righty team, floor's yours. You lead off, Andrew.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is really to give you a bit of an update of what's happening, and also get some commitment about moving forward on this project. There are a number of strands to it. We have, of course, the actual new toilet block. We've also got other work that could be done to help with the whole program and reinvigorate or refresh the CBD. So what I'll do is I'll pass it to Rosie. Just also mention her commitment. She only arrived back in Timaru from Australia at about 4 o'clock this morning, and she's in here to do this report. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. I will forgive me if I'm just a wee bit slow in response. So the previous resolution that we had from this council with the long-term plan budget allocation, you generously allocated funding to the project, and it was framed in somewhat open-ended terms as to what that funding would be applied for, but we referred to the relevant chapters in the master plan and capital funding projects. So I'm mindful of the time, happy to take the report as read and answer questions, but essentially we're providing you with an update on the discussions with the community and asking you to note now the additional detail we're providing about what we would like to spend that money on and the process we propose to follow to spend it. And so if you have any questions or comments, redirections on any of the additional detail now provided, we would welcome that. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Rosie. Councillor Binnington.
Just where are we at with the slippery tiles? Doesn't seem to get a mention, and the funding for that.
Yeah, good question. So we've just spent just under $30,000 on enhancement out of the $500,000 that's been allocated for that, and that's the work that's been done outside the CML building. So we are expecting to spend the full $500,000 within the current financial year, and officers in our land transport unit are working also with some of the team at Alpine Energy, looking at where the interface between different renewals and things that could be happening to make sure that it's the locations chosen are sort of optimised for where the issues are.
I guess I was challenged by Josh South saying that we sit on our hands. He's quite happy to come in person, but he said we're biased against people with disabilities because we just keep pushing it back. For those that don't know Josh, he's on calipers with one leg, and he says it's a nightmare. So can we actually get out what we're going to do, what those locations are, and when we're going to do it?
Yeah, just note that we also have done that non-slip coating on the tiles, and we're just finishing that off as well. Piazza was the last area that's been done, so that is a short-term solution, but yeah, we'll get a plan out on the longer term stuff.
Yeah, the direction I had from officers about 2 weeks back was that they were about 2 weeks away from providing that update, so I'll make sure it gets released. Yeah.
That'd be great. And if we can circulate it to those organisations with elderly disabilities so they're actually aware of what we're doing. No one's with me, but personally, I think spending $1 million on Strathallan Corner is a total waste of money. It's fine where it is, and I would have thought we had other priorities, so I'll leave that there. But I am a bit confused about some of the money you're spending and what it actually means. My first one was I thought VT, when we'd spoken previously, had a handbook on events and how to do them, and all sorts of things like that. So an event coordinator for 50K, I'd want more detail exactly what they're doing. Then kind of a wee bit the same with the local business owners finding it difficult to interact with the council, I presume it is. So we're spending 50K on someone to interact with our own council officers. That's how I read it. So I'm a bit confused around that. And my final one was the 80K around geotechnic and other things. I thought we were doing a study to find out definitively what our soil was. And what exactly is that person going to do? Thanks.
Sure, I will take those one by one. So just to clarify, and I'm referring now to the landscape table, which is the project and budget analysis for vibrancy initiatives. So one of the third row, the name of the project, Create All Fund and Arts and Events Coordinator Function Strategy and Program, comes straight out of the way in which that initiative is labelled in the master plan. But if you look at the detail as to where the funding will go in the fourth column, it's not proposed to use that money for any additional roles. So the $50,000 appears at the bottom of that row, and it's for supplementary events and activities in partnership with BT and the Chamber and whoever, CBD Group, whoever else that may be. So yes, BT are already delivering events, so these would be new and additional and targeted to the city centre. And that's what our city centre stakeholders have asked for, so they would be designed to increase footfall. So there are some activities there that would involve, it's essentially Troy and myself, further investigating and putting our time to dig into what any gaps might be in that area, but it's existing officer resource, it's not consultants or positions. The $50,000 you said to fund around interaction with council officers, I'm assuming that's a reference to the initiative about supporting trading in public places and outdoor dining. Yeah. So yeah, you're correct. The feedback from our business owners and building owners has been that council officers in some cases are potentially not as enabling as they could be. And to some extent, and this is acknowledged, and I've noted this in the middle central column, there is a real limitation around what some existing officers in their current roles can do because of the conflict of interest where they're providing a regulatory function. So we're not proposing to duplicate any regulatory function with any of that funding. There's also a perception that some of the policy itself is not as enabling as it could be, whether that's bylaws or policy, or in some cases it's things that are where we have limitations from central government, such as the Building Act. And so of that $50,000, we're proposing to use $10,000 of that with gap filler. We already have essentially a summary of where the issues are, but it's a very cost-effective way in terms of the hours required to actually go, well, here's what our policy says and here's an alternative wording. And obviously myself and Brendan and other members of internal officers, our time's not accounted for there, but it is still primarily an internal internal job. But the $10,000 with gap filler, what that does, it's essentially a very efficient way of tapping into all the existing knowledge they have about what other councils are doing and how other councils have worded their policy and bylaws where they're looking to make these changes. It doesn't mean, just to be quite clear, and I've discussed this with Brendan, it doesn't mean that you go, great, those are all the changes we need to make, because there will be trade-offs and there will be other stakeholders who want to achieve different outcomes with any policy or bylaw, but it will enable us to zero in on what the opportunities are. And then the $40,000 in there, that again, that's not for officers. I've said facilitate parklets or kit of parts loan to businesses seeking to trial outdoor dining or trading opportunities. So we do have quite a few stakeholders in our city centre who would like to try doing things outside their shop and bringing a bit more vibrancy in. So this is literally to assist with the physical project work that they might require outside their business. It's not officer or consultant time. Yep. And then the final one was the $80,000 for the strategic development function. So that $80,000 does not include the work that's already been undertaken around the geotechnical report that was done in the previous financial year, and it doesn't include the investment that our property unit continue to make to resolve that issue and collect further data. So that's going on anyway. But what that $80,000 would be applied for, essentially half of it is the cost of reinstating formerly our earthquake-prone building liaison officer, but that role would change. The value that we could realise in terms of making contact with every owner of every earthquake-prone building, it was good value, but we've exhausted the value. We've spoken to them. We know what the issues are. But there's a lot of other building owners out there who are looking for advisory support with their building, which our current officers in a regulatory role cannot provide. And there's also one of the main frustrations that continues to come through is that the advice being received from our local consulting community is inconsistent, and that has really significant financial implications for the owners of some buildings. And so they would really like to see council continue to take a lead on that and really zero in on where those issues are, where inconsistent advice is being received, and the geotechnical is one of them, and set up that community of practice with local consultants to look at what are our common challenges and what could some common responses be. So it's $40,000 for 6 months, 1 day a week, which is, for anyone doing the maths on consultants, is actually pretty reasonable. And then I've left $40,000 there as well. I've said discretionary budget for the officer leading that project, because I would expect that as they work with the local community of practice and building owners, they might identify a need for a particular additional case study or a report to be done. So it doesn't have to be spent until a value-add opportunity is identified.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
No, I've got another question, but different.
I suppose I was a little bit disappointed with the vibrancy list. I thought, there's not much that's tangible there, and I thought, once again, it's more reports and it's a bit of parking signage, and I know you'll disagree with me, and a bit of installing of screens. So I suppose I thought there'd be some more tangible things for our community to see the value in our spend. However, that's not my point. I wanted to talk about budget, because I feel like my calculator and your calculator might not be the same, acting the same way, because we have the toilets that are at 308, our investment, 384,900. We have the tiles at 500,000, the redevelopment of 995,000, and the vibrancy work at 200,000, which comes to over 2 million. Where is the additional budget coming from? Or have I completely misread your report?
Sorry, are you trying to make it all fit within the 1.5 from the LTP? Is that the...
Well, that's what, when you look at your financial and funding implications.
Yeah.
Yes, then. I'm trying to make it fit that section 135 page 135, 36, 37, 38? Because that's within this financial year.
I beg your pardon, you're quite right. So the 1.5 plus the 600 gives you the 2.1 for the capital projects. Yep, and what I have failed to mention in the financial and funding implications is the operational allocation, which is 200,000 a year for each of the first 3 years of the long-term plan. So those vibrancy initiatives don't need to fit within the 2.1. Sorry. So is operational budget, and I've referred to it, but I haven't referred to it under financial and funding implications. Sorry for the confusion there. Yeah.
100K for the first, because we're only really talking about this financial year, aren't we?
Correct.
Which is 200K.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that rate-funded OPEX or loan-funded OPEX?
It will be rates funded OPEX, yes, but it's funding that is yet to be identified. The council resolution was the chief executive would identify the funding. So, yeah.
And I haven't identified it. I haven't identified it yet.
No,
I still don't think that adds up. But anyway, I feel like this is over budget. But I was hoping someone might correct me.
The resolution was the CapEx got approved, and then there was an OPEX. I was to go and find the OPEX within the current budgets. Haven't found it yet.
I guess that does concern me, because we've got one part of the council spending it and we haven't found it at the other half. So
She hasn't spent it yet.
that's my point though. Until you found it, it shouldn't be spent.
What you're doing is approving, I guess, our intention to spend it in this way, because once it is found, then we need to get on and do it. You have signed up to the master plan now, and there is a commitment to the community, particularly in the CBD, and they really are waiting for things to happen. And I think that we have an obligation to deliver that.
I guess that's a wee bit of a point of it though, Andrew. Getting another staff member, a consultant, someone else, people are looking for action. I guess that's within the CBD. That's the feedback I'm getting.
Well, we could are doing the capital side of things with the toilet redevelopment and Staff Allen Corner, but what we're proposing here is what the community has asked for. We've done extensive consultation with the CBD group, with the chamber, with VT, and these are the things that are their priorities and they're asking for.
Yeah, so just to be clear as well, with that $200,000 of operational spend, when we discussed this back in July, the point and purpose of that budget is to essentially unlock and enable private sector investment. So while you have got a small portion there that will be directly for funding events and activities, the idea is to leverage to encourage them to invest in their buildings, to encourage them to invest in their businesses, and that's really well understood by those stakeholders, and they're saying, yes, it might, I absolutely take your point, Councillor Scott, it might not feel that tangible, but this is what they're telling us will provide, and theoretically, the tipping point or enable them to take that next step. And I think that generally we've seen that all around the country, that councils can definitely stand in the way of vibrancy, but it's not primarily our role to create it. That is something our community and our building and business owners do for us, actually.
I think the trick is it may be 200k in value, but it might be we can do it within the existing FTEs we've got. Because if we're trying to unlock our regulatory or some of our bylaws or whatever, potentially it can be done within. Because I find it interesting that we as council staff are telling business people how to invest. Well, actually it should be the other way around. They're the ones that are in business.
I guess that was my point of all that money spent, though. It's almost to battle us, in some ways. It is what it is. And I get your point, Rosie. Is there any way of measuring how much we're unlocking on the other side? Because that's a grand statement.
Different councils have approached it in different ways, and I don't know if you remember, I think you came actually when you came up from Dunedin. Yeah.
Yep.
And obviously one of the real challenges, and I think I've identified it in some of the risks with the options here, this is a really difficult one to measure because of the number of variables you can't control. So what's happening more generally with market conditions and, you know, the price of construction, interest rates, all of that. So to that extent, we do look at feedback from those people, their qualitative analysis, and that's, I know we're talking about roles, just to be really specific, of the 200,000, it's 50,000 in total that's proposed for roles. One is the 10,000 for gap filler to tap into all those case studies they've got from the other councils, and one is the $40,000 for the liaison, the building liaison function. Yeah, I mean, they have given us verbatim feedback about the value that they've experienced from that work historically and that they'd like it to continue. That's the best point of reference we have. I could go back through the earlier, not on the spot, but I could go back through the earlier records from when we had David Penny as our earthquake-prone building liaison officer, and we could look at the number of buildings that took a step forward in terms of addressing their earthquake-prone status during the time we had him engaged. But definitely anecdotally, there are people that moved as a result of conversations with him.
I mean, I don't want to report for a report's sake, but that one actually does have some value because the time's ticking. For those that are doing nothing in 12 years, they'll get a sticker on their window or door saying no one can enter. So, you know, I'm supportive of that, but that seems to be the missing step on that one. My final question actually is to Andrew. $3 million on the Sophia Street car park. When's it actually happening? And the second question I'm a bit confused about, we're getting sensors that will capture occupancy data to inform the next steps. What's that in relation to?
So in regard to the car park, yeah, we sort of put that project a little bit on hold at the moment because we're waiting on the actual soil testing and getting a definitive answer for that. That may have quite an impact on the state of that building.
Okay.
So, you know, rather than rush in and spend money getting consultants, we'll just sort of pause for a minute until we get all the data in there, yeah.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And sorry, timeline, we're about 4 weeks from having that work done, is that correct?
Drilling starts on the 18th of November.
Perfect. There you go.
Been booked, yeah.
There's a lot of interest obviously in that one, isn't there? So, I mean, that's the key project of anything in this. That'll potentially turn the dial.
So just around the sensors, I mean, where are you putting them and what's the reason for it?
So what's this in regard to? This is the parking study, is it? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
This is the 750,000 in year 2 of the long-term plan for new parking infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. So that's it around, it's an infrastructural thing. Basically, we've got parking meters everywhere at the moment. Those parking meters are very old technology. They're not made anymore. They can't be serviced anymore. So the intention is at some stage we need to think about better ways of doing that, and that is usually through pay and display machines, pay and park, or you go to the full meter eye and have a completely automated system or number plate recognition. So we've got a number of options there, and that's what that funding will be for. It'll come up to council at that point. Yeah, whether you want to continue to charge for parking in the CBD is another decision to make.
Just on, sorry, last question, on Sophia Street, how much do we make on that building per annum?
Our current revenue on that is about 150,000 a year.
Okay.
I just noted in the feedback a couple of people asked about the footbridge, and we've had a report to council, 50 grand to take it away, 75 to fix it, and it worries me that if we don't make a decision and do nothing, it might be 200 to fix it next year or something. And I just wondered if, part of the budget could be reallocated to do that. I'm not sure what part, but it'd be good to see something something happen with that sooner rather than later, because it will get neglected and end up costing us more, I believe.
And I missed the meeting that you guys discussed that, and I've had, some communication from Mr. Preen on that, who's obviously an interested party, but it would be, I think what's missing is we don't have the market price, so it would be interesting, actually, to package it up and see what the price is and then consider through tenders what that might look like.
Yeah, basically design is nearly complete and we will be going out to market very shortly, including Mr. Rooney, who,
Okay, the last meeting we had was the chief executive was going to go find some money to pay for it, and that's all we've heard since, so I thought it wasn't happening.
The feedback that I'd had from some of the locals that live along there actually just went along and knocked on some of those doors that actually probably pay for it and fix it up themselves, because they're the main ones that use it.
It's a community project for a start, and the community may be interested in funding it again, but to the chief executive's point, we need to know how much it is first.
Yeah, okay, with that, I'm quite happy to move the option 1 be accepted and we get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Is there a further discussion? I think the challenge that we got, that we have at the moment is the money there? Hard to get on with stuff if the money's not there in regard to the...
So to that point, so are we making it clear not to spend the 200 till it's found? Because we keep doing this sort of stuff and tripping ourselves up. No, I'm not saying do nothing, Councillor Booth. I'm saying you're the one that's always on about saving money in budgets until it's something that you're interested in. Then it's a raffle. So what I'm saying is I don't think we should be okaying the 200 till it's found.
Okay, so we do have a mover. I'll see if there's a seconder for that current motion. And are you moving all items? Because we haven't discussed in full the Strathallan. So you're comfortable with everything? So you're the mover? Yep. Can I a seconder for that? Councillor Jackson? Okay. Any further discussion before I put that motion?
I'd like to propose an amendment, but do you have to put that one first?
No, you could propose an amendment to the motion.
I just wonder if we should change Resolution 3 to endorse the prioritisation for the 24-25 vibrancy initiatives, subject to budget being available.
Yeah. So, no. Okay.
Last time you suggested something like this, it was a cluster, so let's not do it.
Okay. Okay, what we'll do is we'll vote on the original motion. So there's Councillor Booth and Councillor Jackson. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Raise your hand. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The ayes have it. Yeah, I'll note the same. Yeah, and Councillor Pye, and who else didn't vote? Who else voted against? Or did everyone else? Was that 7? Oh, okay. So you were... No, that's where I got wrong. Okay, no, all good.
Having said that, Kai Whakatare said that he was going to potentially look at it within FTEs and that whole concept or philosophy of that money and what might be spent is still happening in the background. Is that correct?
Well, that's, I think, Michelle's point of it, as long as it's
Yeah.
Mr. Traynor can find the budget.
But that wasn't in that wasn't in the motion, so that is carried. Yep. Thank you. And thanks for coming in. With having no sleep, so I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, team. We are now 9.12. We've got Grant. Welcome, Grant. So we are on page 150. And Andrew, I'll let you guys kick in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just as obviously the paper's there to be read, including the attachments, report from PDP. Just I suppose as a summary, as you'll have read, that basically climate change is occurring, the report says, and that there's very little we can do to stop it. Obviously, in respect of, there's two aspects here. We've got the coastal water and causing erosion, and then the potential for flooding from the likes of Saltwater Creek. And the report breaks both of those down. The focus of the report says that at the moment the coastal erosion is going to take quite a period of time, but it will encroach eventually towards Redruth, but that's well over 100 years' time. At the moment we obviously have the barrier of the Kiwi Rail and the rail there, and whilst that's there, that seems to be a barrier that is proving effective and will continue to prove effective. In respect of Saltwater Creek, they did projections on rainfall, and I think the figure was 120 mils of rain, which we haven't ever had to date, but it is more likely to occur in years to come as these events occur. There was a couple of areas mentioned. A number of them we would be needing to work with in conjunction, talking to ECAN, making the report available to them, and two other options that were sort of identified where there was a weak point or a low point along behind the material recovery facility, and potentially it mentioned increasing that, and then just the one pump available at present, and the suggestion was that it may not cope with an inundation of water, and obviously the mitigating factor there, or mitigation aspect there, was to potentially look at another pump. Increasing the stop bank where the material recovery facility is potentially just moves the problem somewhere else, and that's where something, as is mentioned there, that the engineering report would be required. So the summary, I suppose, is that the coastal erosion will eventually occur, but at the moment it's manageable as long as we maintain maintain the railway line, and we support that. If they were to move out, then obviously that's something that we would need to address. And as far as the other part goes, of Saltwater Creek, we could potentially look at now options such as an additional pump and obviously liaison with ECAN. So that's probably about the summary.
Yeah, so basically this report is giving you the risks that are associated with coastal erosion, with sea inundation and with flooding events. So what we haven't covered is the mitigation of those risks. There is a couple of options, as Grant mentioned, but we haven't gone into any further detail and costed those up at this stage. So really it's just giving you a status of what the risks are as requested.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Comments or questions?
So it's quite a time out, and we don't think Kiwi Rail are going to relinquish that asset in any short term, that's for sure, and they have been quite fastidious about maintaining it, and it does create a barrier for many places along the coast and what have you, and the way they do it, because it locks in and what have you. The pump thing, is that where if there was extra water coming in from Saltwater Creek and that flooded down the back of that area, that ends up in that big pond, that requires a pump there, and it pumps it back out and throws it back into Saltwater Creek?
Yes, that's correct. It basically throws it over the stop bank into the creek, yeah.
And that's where you'd have to have that quick liaison and quick action from ECAN to open the bar, unlike what happened up north, and get that away regularly and quickly.
Yes, it would be part of the plan.
Yeah. It would also, though, depend on what the seas were doing, because there may be an issue to opening the bar because if the sea was coming in, that may in fact have the opposite effect of what was desired. So that would be something that need to be discussed with ECAN at the time.
Councillor Piddington.
So are we getting it costed? We've got a report saying this is the problem, this is the way to fix it. So I'm suggesting we get...
It comes down to our appetite for risk and whether or not it needs to be done now, or have we got mechanisms in place with those?
I get that, Pete, but what I'm asking is, if the pump's 20k and it reduces the risk greatly, should we do it? But I don't know what the pump is. It might be 300k. So it's hard for me to make an assessment. I've got a pump at home you can borrow.
I think we might need a bigger one. Yeah, I guess it's up to you if you wish us to proceed with giving you a bit more information regarding these options, and we can get them costed up. Just be aware there is a cost associated in doing that. So at the moment I'm presenting you with a risk which is considered reasonably low. The chances of a significant rainfall event of 120 mils is extremely rare, probably much this year. But that risk increases as we go forward in time. So I don't think the risk is very high at the moment. But in 20 years, 30 years, it might be a lot higher.
So why did we get the report?
No, we'd asked for it. So.
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking us.
Yeah. No, so...
Is there an issue here that we're setting up future generations with a massive problem? Or is it not a problem? Because there's a bigger picture here, isn't there? That we continue to dump refuge into an area that's so close to the sea. And I don't know the answer to that, and that report didn't really give me that answer.
It was part of the purpose of the report, but if you in the report it gives the details around the coastal erosion and the future there. So I think basically in the next 100 years the coastline will move about 80 metres. Our landfill is, from memory, about 100 and something metres away. So we the landfill will still not be affected in the next 100 years. Next 200 years, don't know. Yeah.
And to add to that, with the cells, when they're capped, the engineering standard is at the highest standard. So they're aware that it's close to the coastal area. So the engineering that's involved is probably as good as we can get, because we're stuck with where it is. And obviously going forward, when we do need a new landfill, which is potentially around 2050, a bit later, one thing we wouldn't be looking to do is get one by the coast or by a waterway. So we're slowly learning, yeah.
Alrighty, and yeah, happy to move, as is. Second it? Yeah, Councillor Pye, any further discussion? Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Cool, thank you, appreciate that piece of work. Okay. So we've got urgent business, not quite finished, 1, 2 and 3. So I'll just talk through these ones. These are just requests for reports. And we might be able to move them all as one, but there's 3 things I wanted to discuss. One was, the ECAN rate issue we had. So I'd like a report that basically reports to date on what the issue is, what's been done to remedy it, and also, do you want to, yep. And then the second part of that is, do we continue charging through, charging through effectively.
So the Chair, I can talk to part 1 of that. The rates resolution amendment is being passed at tomorrow's council meeting for Environment Canterbury. And basically, as soon as that's done, we've been doing test recalculations on what the test figures look like, but we wanted to get it in concrete before we did the final calculations. So from those, and I think looking at my own bill, I saved a massive $150 off my rates bill, which is quite nice. From that, they will recalculate all the bills, and it will go out as part of the instalment 2 mail out, which will be due in the December quarter. Any overpayments anyone's made on instalment 1 will be taken off the instalment 2 period, and then any savings for the rest of it will be spread out over those last 3 instalments.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, so the second part which needs consideration is the benefit of receiving $200,000 for doing the service versus, what some of the staff have to go through, receiving constructive feedback. And if you talk to ECAN councillors, this is not something that's even on their mind, because they don't take any rates for anyone, and no one's giving them that constructive feedback. You know, we've had people that have effectively had, you know, mental health days because of, you know, all that. So I think probably the request is a report on the benefit of the 200k to council, and should we be taking that? So you're happy with that? Thanks,
So
council.
one of the options in that is we are looking at whether the system's capable of sending out two bills, one under our letterhead for ours, one under ECAN letterhead for theirs, separating them and maybe still servicing. So we'll see what the cost of that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool, and that's great. So let's have a paper on that, that we can consider the options.
Sorry, just to Stephen quickly, with all the work staff are doing downstairs and all the work that's happening, what are ECAN chipping in for this cock-up?
My understanding is they said they will cover the cost of the information.
Sending them a bill?
I'd have to confirm that with Andrea, what the exact details is. But
That's every indication I have got is exactly that.
we're trying to do it in as efficient a way as possible, and that's why, because again, the ECAN ratepayers are our ratepayers, etc. So that's why we're bundling it in with the instalment 2 invoices as well, just to do it in as cost-effective manner as possible.
Thanks. Cool, so I'll move these all together unless there's uncomfort with any of them. The next one was an initial starting paper on unitary authority. Sort of initially would be pros and cons and maybe a pathway to further consideration. Obviously there's Dunedin, Southland, West Coast, lots of different councils are having this discussion. So if you're comfortable with that, and I can work with Nige T on what that might look like as far as a first point. And then the third one was this Smithfield revenue loss, the effect on our operating cost. What is Mr Dixon's team doing, and what are they going to bring to us to make some savings? But that's paper. It's not I don't need the answer now, Mr Dixon. That's a paper for a future day. So everyone comfortable with those three? So I'll move them as one. I think Councillor Piddington, you're happy to second those. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we move now to minor nature. The first one was local water done well. So I'll pass to them, Mr Trainer, to update us.
So we've been having meetings with the IAA and 3 neighbouring councils while we're working up our local water done well delivery plan. We've got a project team, internal project team, with one exception. We've brought Michael Borer in to do the financials. Financials for the water are nearly are complete. We've just got to review those, and the financials for what remains has also been done. And the water as a standalone looks sustainable. However, there is an issue left in the council that has to be sorted. So the size of that issue is to be checked. We intend bringing a paper and or workshop to the November council meeting, so as we get you up to speed on where we're at and what is required. The DIA have been impressing on us that it's more than likely that the CCO model will be the preferred, and whether that's a standalone CCO or with neighbouring councils is yet to be determined. The neighbouring councils, Waitaki is forging ahead with its own CCO, but they are interested in potential mergers at a later date. They just want to get moving before they look at that. Ashburton is doing the same. Waimati and Mackenzie, they're working up their numbers as of now. Waimati didn't submit an LTP, so they're waiting to get that done. They're doing it this year, and they need to work that up. And once we get that, Michael Borer is then going to pull the 4 councils together to look at what does that look like as an entity on its own. So we're working well together.
So your concerns are over stranded overheads if they turn to a CCO, and
That's
how
correct.
that would look?
Yeah, correct.
Just remind me, what percentage of our staff are involved in water? Do you know?
Oh, 40, so 12%, something like that. plus back office.
I think there is a concern from DIA that the country's going to end up with 70 or 67 CCOs, and I think I do have concern that we're probably the ones that are keen to work together, and everyone's forging off in different directions. So we'll await the answer from Waimate Mackenzie, but I think that's partly why we actually need to further the conversation around unitary authorities, and it's not around necessarily, or it's not at all around a takeover, it's just how we work better together across water and the works. And so I think there's a better and more efficient model across the three councils that can work. So then the next one was the art gallery in the pump shed, which I didn't think that building was permanent out the front, but it is permanent out the front. I'm sure it's going to have some lovely cladding by the time it's finished and look like a mini art gallery or something. Oh, yeah. Oh, have you sent me an email? Hold on, we've got some paper. Let's work through this first. Or Beth and Matt, if you can give us an update. Thanks.
Oh, thanks a lot. I've just got some notes here. I'll just refer to them.
Whoever wants to lead.
So effectively, so the it's required for resource consent. Well, actually, these two are sitting there. They can talk.
Very happy to respond through you, Mr. Mayor. It would be great to have an understanding of what exactly your concerns are. Councillor Booth, I understand that you did speak with Matt about this earlier today. So for the context of this meeting and for my benefit, if you could just let me know what your question is, and I'm happy to provide some responses.
Just for context, I just flicked you all the email of the shed, so what it looks like.
Yeah, look, it's an absolute eyesore. I just can't believe you put the thing there. It's just a square box in front of an art gallery. Do you not think that's quite inappropriate? I think it is.
With respect, Councillor Booth, actually we've got some very clear regulatory constraints around why we have to have that in the first place. I have got Matt here who can actually speak to some of the specifics. A couple of the key points here is that the fire panel and the valve, we've got some very specific requirements around distance and prescribed distance to where the truck itself will park up. Prior to this, we didn't actually have sprinklers installed, so we have to have this in place. As you can see from the material that Matt's distributed, it is quite a significant bit of infrastructure, so it does require housing around it. It must also be free from proximity to combustible items, so that's items such as trees, for example, or other buildings. Has to have a minimum distance from other buildings. Previous location that we had suggested was not favoured by Heritage New Zealand as it blocked the view of the house. This was done specifically with consultation from all of the staff in respect to the placement. There is no alternative location for it. And we've agreed that it was doable if we could make best use of that space for advertising purposes, which would also effectively reduce our OPEX when it came to advertising. But happy to hand over to you, Matt.
Yeah, just also note that those photos you've taken, it's not complete. So that is not actually the finished product of the outside of the building. It will be of the same style as the house, so it'll be smooth and same colour. But then the idea is to put advertising space on it. It's us making the best out of a worse situation. If you look at that plan that shows it on the front page, there is nowhere else we can put it. It can't be obstructed by anything. It must be within 20 metres of the road. So it can't be under trees, can't be at the back of gardens, can't be down in the loop. It pretty much is what it is.
Backed further towards the building.
It has to be a minimum distance. It has to be a minimum distance away.
And you would hardly notice it was there, and it could have been built into the back of the newer modern piece? And it would have been less than 20 metres from the road.
So if we were to build into the modern piece, it would be a consent amendment because we're actually affecting another part of the building. The costs would increase, and then what we do is we put a potential risk of water in the art store, which I think we can all agree is not
Things are not new.
catastrophic.
They're in most modern buildings, and they're included in the buildings.
Yes, and in most modern buildings, they're brand new and you can design it into the building. In this case, we can't. We can't design it into any building. If we were building brand new, yes, you could recess it in and as part of the design, but here we are trying to retrofit sprinklers into a 120-year-old building. This has never been a secret of where its location has been, all the way through from consent, through tenders and procurement. It's always been there.
Or fence comes down, you might find that it might be a wee bit different when the public start driving past and seeing what it is.
As I said, it's not been a secret of where this location's been throughout the whole project. Yeah.
I think that's a little bit unfair, team, because your consent only just came through in June, so
No, this is a consent amendment that you're seeing the date. The consent came through back.
amended on the 7th of the 8th, but a building consent issued on the 10th of the 6th, but...
Building
so I
consent was
don't
issued in
think
2021.
Tender and procurement wouldn't have noted that.
The consent was issued in 2021. If I could have put it anywhere else, I would have. But it is what it is. So we're trying to make the best out of the situation by hiding it with advertising.
In order for us to be compliant with the sprinkler system, we have to have that this is no alternative. So that's what we've got to do. As we mentioned before, we can offer wraps around the actual facility itself. That does reduce our OPEX when it comes to the advertising, and the team's comfortable that they can actually use that to the best of their ability to advertise well, relatively discreetly and less expensive.
Because it doesn't, what is the height of the unit? I can't see that.
It's basically from the floor level to at the back. It's 2.4 plus it has a parapet around the front.
2.4.
Yeah, to the back gutter. Yeah, because it has got a monopitch, which we've hidden the roof behind the ceiling, the roofing iron behind, so it didn't stick out.
Have the same cladding, same colour on it, and I don't know if you could put some terracotta tiles on the top.
We actually tried to avoid putting the terracotta tiles on because we didn't want it to. No. Yeah. I did ask the fire company, the sprinkler installers, because when we did set it up, it was like, well, what can we do? And you can see in there's one pipe, and it goes up and round, and they said they could take 100 mil of height out of it, and I said it's not worth spending a lot of money for 100 mil. So.
Can you turn it into a Doctor Who-styled phone box? Might be look quite nice next to the art gallery.
It's a piece of art, it's how do we make the best out of the situation?
And given that we hang art exhibition signage for the upcoming exhibitions out the front of the gallery anyway, as I mentioned, we're going to utilise this as a wrap space so that we can advertise from all three corners, three sides as well, so it gets full visibility. We have considered those options and consulted with the team on that.
Cool. Yep, let's get creative. Alrighty, thanks, team, appreciate that.
Just the stadium update.
Oh, sorry, Stu.
So the tenders have been received, they've been evaluated, and a paper will be coming to the Tenders and Procurement Committee meeting on the 19th of November. We're also trying to schedule in a council meeting the same day to consider the outcome of the Tenders and Procurement Committee deliberations, and then we're on our way.
Thank you.
Perfect. Apologies for missing that. And then, so just public items for consideration. We had Dr. Phil present, and we had Russell Lund. I think we'll just, we can just note Russell Lund, that's fine. I don't think there's any consideration. If you're uncomfortable, obviously very passionate about the theatre, and it had a lot to do with historic buildings. And then in regard to the Climate Trust, running out of voice, or leaders forum, is there an action that you want in there? Obviously, I think Councillor Scott, you alluded to some of the work going on with VT, and I think that sort of, again, to me, makes sense. We do have the opportunity for trusts like this, and I actually did think after the last meeting that there was going to be some collaboration again with Sustainable South Canterbury, who we obviously fund for other work through the waste contract, etc. And there are opportunities to come and request that funding. There is a lot of work being done, and I think, Michelle, you've made that point around a lot of the stuff sits with industry as well, and there'll be a heap of work going. Is work specific for South Canterbury going to differ than any other work? I question that.
100% agree. There is so much that industry bodies are doing, and Fonterra is well aware of Scope 3 emissions and plan and are working with. So I fail to see how South Canterbury can solve what is a national and global problem. I understand where Dr. Phil's coming from, but I think it wouldn't be a good investment for us.
No, I agree, and that's what it comes down to me. It's ratepayer money. What are we actually going to get out of 100k proposed? I question the value. Councillor Piddington, thanks.
Just on Russell Lund's proposal, I do know Russell. He's quite a clever guy.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any way we can utilise him? Because, he's saying actually the cost could be 20 million if you lived within the boundaries and, went back. Because are we Rolls-Royce inside and we only have to be a Ford Cortina and still function, that 80-20? Maybe we miss a couple of shows, but it functions. I don't know. I'm just keen, and I know we're a long way down, but if there's a quick way, maybe the CE could have a chat to him just to make sure all our bases are covered.
I said I would talk to him.
Yep.
Whether we miss out on shows or not, the seat numbers are the seat numbers. So,
Design.
He's talking more about the lines more than anything else, wasn't he? The set lines and
So
stuff.
don't spend millions for
yeah,
two
but the
shows
number
a
of
year.
lines that we're looking at is very similar to Ashburton. And remember, Ashburton were telling us he would like more lines.
Yeah, but what Russell was saying was more about the video capabilities and that sort of stuff, because you look at shows overseas now, like that ABBA show, for example, it's all done with
Yeah, we asked the
technology,
user group
so-
that, and they said it's in its real infancy.
Yeah, but still, looking ahead.
That was to do with the question I asked him around how he would approach it, and that was how the Oamaru Council actually did their one. They got the locals in, and they just worked through it with some experienced locals, and they didn't. Whereas we require a firm budget, we want to know what's going to cost, and therefore we rush out and get all these reports, and everyone loads everything on, rather than just sending a couple of local builders into it and just start getting stuck into it.
I think that's probably the different approach. That
That's what he meant by risk. Yeah. But we're not prepared to take that risk. So unless we are prepared to take that risk, there's no point.
I think this time round we are using the locals.
Yeah.
We've got the local architects, we've got local user group. We want, whoever builds it, they've got to work to a plan.
Yeah.
You've got to have a plan.
We've got some of the best local heritage builders here now in Timaru, yet they didn't make the grade to do the local Argentine art gallery.
Yeah.
So how's that going to work?
I can't speak on that one.
That's right. We've got a process, and I think Mr. Trainer committed to connect with him, and he has done previously after that meeting. So that, I think, is everything. Well done. Thanks, everyone. Safe travels to those that are going down to VT conference, and others we've got Hall of Fame starting at 6. So brilliant. Thanks, everyone, for the day.